I stood frozen as my stepmother Patricia's voice crackled through the phone, dripping with satisfaction. "You're banned from the family beach house forever. I've already changed all the locks." Her cruel laughter echoed in my ears as memories of Mom and me, building sandcastles on that very beach, flooded my mind. I gripped the phone tighter, feeling the weight of the manila envelope in my other hand. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied calmly. She had no idea what was coming. The call came exactly 2 weeks after we'd laid Mom to rest. I'd been sitting in my cramped apartment sorting through sympathy cards when Patricia's name flashed on my phone screen. Part of me had expected this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the venom in her voice. "I want to make something crystal clear." Patricia had continued after dropping her bombshell. "That beach house belongs to me now. Your father signed everything over before he passed last year, and your mother's little promises to you mean absolutely nothing in a court of law." My hands trembled as I set down the phone. The beach house in Monterey had been in Mom's family for 3 generations. Every summer of my childhood was spent there, learning to swim in the tide pools, hosting bonfires with cousins, and listening to Mom's stories about her own grandmother who'd built the place with her bare hands after immigrating from Ireland. Patricia had entered our lives like a hurricane 5 years ago, just 6 months after Dad's cancer diagnosis. She'd been his hospice volunteer, all sweetness and concern, until the ring was on her finger. Mom had tried to warn us, but grief had made Dad vulnerable, and Patricia knew exactly which strings to pull. The morning after Patricia's call, I drove to Mom's attorney's office. Mr. Peterson had been Mom's lawyer for 20 years, handling everything from her small business contracts to her divorce from Dad when I was in college. His secretary, June, gave me a sympathetic look as she ushered me into his office. "Lana, I've been expecting you," Mr. Peterson said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his massive oak desk. His face bore the weathered look of someone who'd seen too many family disputes turn ugly. "Patricia says Dad signed everything over to her." I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "She claims the beach house is hers now." Mr. Peterson's expression darkened. "Your stepmother has already been here. She produced a will dated 3 years ago that leaves everything to her. She was quite insistent that it superseded any other documents." My heart sank. 3 years ago, Mom had been healthy and vibrant, running her catering business and hosting family gatherings every holiday. The thought of her signing away our family legacy seemed impossible. "Can I see it?" I asked. He slid a photocopy across the desk. I studied Mom's supposed signature at the bottom, something nagging at me about the way the letters curved. Mom had taught me calligraphy when I was 12, and we'd spent hours perfecting our penmanship together. This signature was close, but the M in her name was all wrong. Mom always made her M's with a distinctive flourish, a habit from her Catholic school days. "This isn't right," I said, pointing to the signature. "Look at how the M curves. Mom never wrote her M's like that." Mr. Peterson leaned forward, studying the document more carefully. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. I have years of birthday cards and letters from her. I know my mother's handwriting better than my own." He made a note on his legal pad. "This is interesting, but we'll need more than your word against a notarized document. Patricia's lawyer is Harold Whitman, and he's known for playing hardball." "What about the beach house specifically? Mom always said it would come to me. She promised it in front of the whole family last Thanksgiving." "Verbal promises unfortunately carry little weight without documentation." He paused, tapping his pen thoughtfully. "However, your mother did come to see me about 6 months before she passed. She was concerned about something, but insisted she needed time to gather certain documents before proceeding. She never made it back." A chill ran down my spine. 6 months ago was when Mom had started acting strangely, making cryptic comments about protecting the family legacy and ensuring Patricia couldn't destroy what generations had built. I'd attributed it to anxiety about her recent health scare, but now I wondered if she'd known something we didn't. "Did she say what documents I pressed?" She mentioned something about a trust, but she was very secretive about the details, said she needed to be careful about who knew what. Mr. Peterson's eyes met mine. Lana, is there anyone your mother would have confided in, someone she trusted completely? Margaret's name immediately came to mind. Mom's best friend since high school, a retired paralegal who'd helped Mom with her business contracts for years. If Mom had secrets, Margaret would know them. As I left Mr. Peterson's office, my phone buzzed with a text from my brother Ryan. Family meeting at Patricia's tonight. Don't make waves. She's being generous with us. Generous. The word made my stomach turn. Patricia was already buying loyalty with money that wasn't hers to give, but I'd play along for now. If Mom had taught me anything, it was that the best way to catch a snake was to let it think it was safe. The sun was setting as I drove past the beach house on my way to Patricia's meeting. The Victorian structure stood proud against the orange sky, its white walls and blue trim, exactly as Mom had maintained them. Through the windows, I could see Patricia's gaudy furniture already replacing Mom's carefully chosen antiques. Rage bubbled up inside me, but I forced it down. Mom used to say that patience was like the ocean tide, quiet and steady, but capable of wearing down the strongest rocks. Patricia thought she'd won with her forged will and changed locks, but she had no idea what was coming. The tide was already turning. The next morning, I called Margaret from my car parked outside a coffee shop where I was certain Patricia wouldn't have eyes. Mom's friend answered on the second ring, her voice warm but cautious. Lana, sweetheart, I've been hoping you'd call. Can you meet me at the old lighthouse, 2 o'clock? Come alone. The Pigeon Point Lighthouse had been Mom and Margaret's secret meeting spot since their teenage years. They'd go there to share dreams, cry over broken hearts, and plan their futures. The fact that Margaret chose this location told me everything I needed to know about the gravity of our conversation. I arrived early, parking my Honda next to the weathered fence that surrounded the lighthouse grounds. Margaret's silver Subaru pulled up minutes later, and she emerged carrying a worn leather briefcase that I recognized as her old work bag from her paralegal days. "Let's walk," she said, linking her arm through mine as we headed toward the cliff path. The ocean crashed below us, providing cover for our conversation. "Your mother knew this was coming." Margaret began without preamble. 6 months ago, she overheard Patricia on the phone with someone discussing how to contest wills and override family trusts. That's when she came to me. My breath caught. Mom knew Patricia was planning something. More than that, she discovered Patricia had done this before. Your mother hired a private investigator, paid cash, so there'd be no paper trail. What they found was disturbing. We stopped at a bench overlooking the ocean, and Margaret opened her briefcase. Inside were manila folders, legal documents, and a small black notebook in Mom's handwriting. Patricia's first husband died under suspicious circumstances in Nevada 8 years ago. He was a wealthy developer, no children from previous marriages. He left everything to Patricia, but his sister contested it. The case was dropped when the sister died in a car accident. The blood drained from my face. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying your mother was very careful after learning this information. She knew Patricia was dangerous, possibly lethal, so she created a contingency plan." Margaret pulled out a thick document. "This is a revocable living trust specifically for the beach house. It was created 5 years ago before Patricia even entered the picture and updated 6 months ago with very specific instructions." I took the document with shaking hands. There it was in black and white. The Monterey Beach House property, located at 457 Ocean View Drive, shall be held in trust for my daughter, Lana Catherine Sullivan, to be transferred to her full ownership upon my death. But why didn't she tell me? I asked, tears stinging my eyes. Because Patricia was monitoring everything. Your mother's emails, her phone calls, even her meetings. She couldn't risk Patricia finding out about the trust, so she made sure copies were distributed to people Patricia would never suspect. Margaret explained how Mom had created an elaborate system. Original documents were placed in a safety deposit box at a credit union 2 towns over under Margaret's maiden name. Copies were sent to Mom's college roommate in Boston, her cousin in Seattle, and even her old boss from her first job out of college. Your mother also did something else. Margaret continued pulling out the black notebook. She documented everything. Every threat Patricia made, every suspicious incident, every attempt to isolate her from family and friends. It's all here dated and detailed. I flipped through the pages recognizing Mom's precise handwriting. Entry after entry described Patricia's escalating behavior, canceling Mom's lunch plans with friends, hiding her car keys, switching her medications, suggesting she was becoming forgetful. March 15th. I read aloud. Patricia suggested I should sign a power of attorney just in case my memory issues worsen. I have no memory issues, but she's been telling the children I do. I'm scared of what she might do if I refuse. There's more, Margaret said softly. Your mother recorded some of their conversations. She had a small digital recorder hidden in her knitting bag. She handed me a thumb drive. I've transcribed the most important parts, but you should hear them yourself. Patricia explicitly discusses her plans to take everything and cut you children out completely once your mother was gone. The weight of Mom's fear and preparation hit me like a physical blow. All those months of suffering in silence, gathering evidence while pretending everything was fine. She'd been protecting us even as Patricia tightened the noose around her. What about the will Patricia has? I asked. The one dated 3 years ago. Margaret's expression hardened. Complete fabrication. Your mother's reel will properly executed and witnessed is in the safety deposit box. But here's the brilliant part, the trust supersedes the will. Even if Patricia somehow managed to invalidate the will, the trust would still stand. Your mother made sure of that. But how do we prove Patricia's will is fake? We start by documenting everything. I've already contacted 3 handwriting experts who worked with me during my paralegal years. They'll examine the signatures. I've also reached out to the notary whose stamp appears on Patricia's document. Interestingly, he claims he's never seen that will before. The pieces were falling into place. Mom hadn't just left me the beach house. She'd left me a roadmap to expose Patricia's crimes. But I knew this was just the beginning. Patricia had money connections and a ruthless determination to keep what she'd stolen. There's something else, Margaret said as we headed back to our cars. Your mother left you a message. She recorded it the week before she died. She handed me a small digital recorder. Listen to it when you're alone. And Lana, be careful. Patricia destroyed one family already. Don't let her destroy yours. As I drove home, the recorder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket. Mom's voice trapped in that tiny device, waiting to tell me secrets from beyond the grave. I thought about Patricia, probably sitting in Mom's kitchen right now, drinking from Mom's favorite mug, planning how to spend money that was never hers. The war for my family's legacy was just beginning. Patricia thought she'd covered all her bases with her forged will and family manipulation, but she'd underestimated 2 things, a mother's love and a daughter's determination. Mom had laid the groundwork for justice. Now it was my turn to finish what she'd started. Patricia's house blazed with light as I pulled into the circular driveway that evening. She'd moved into the colonial Dad had bought her just months before his death, a garish McMansion that stuck out like a sore thumb in the historic neighborhood. Through the tall windows, I could see my siblings already gathered in the living room. Ryan met me at the door, his expression guarded. My older brother had always been the pragmatist of the family, the one who valued stability over sentiment. His wife Jennifer stood beside him, her designer handbag catching the porch light. Don't start anything, Ryan warned in a low voice. Patricia's willing to set up monthly allowances for all of us, $5,000 each. That would really help with the kids' tuition. $5,000 a month, blood money from our mother's estate. I bit back my response and followed him inside. Emma rushed over to hug me, but her embrace felt stiff. My younger sister had always been the peacemaker, the one who avoided conflict at all costs. Her husband David nodded from across the room, already nursing what looked like his second scotch. Patricia held court from Dad's old leather recliner wearing a black dress that was probably supposed to look mournful, but came off as calculating. Her lawyer, Harold Whitman, stood beside her like a sentinel, his sharp suit and sharper smile reminding me of a well-dressed shark. "Now that we're all here," Patricia began, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I want to discuss how we move forward as a family. I know losing your mother has been difficult, but I think she would want us to handle this transition with grace." Grace. The word made me want to laugh. Mom had been the epitome of grace, hosting dinner parties for Patricia, including her in family photos, treating her with kindness, even as Patricia schemed behind her back. "I've had Mr. Whitman draw up some documents." Patricia continued sliding papers across the coffee table. "Monthly allowances for each of you, as I mentioned to Ryan. All I ask in return is that you sign these acknowledgments accepting the will and agreeing not to contest any distributions." I picked up the document, scanning the legal language. Hidden between the whereases and heretofores was exactly what I expected: a complete waiver of any claims to Mom's estate, including the beach house. "This is generous of you, Patricia," Jennifer said, already reaching for a pen. "The kids' college expenses have been overwhelming." "What about Mom's personal belongings?" I asked, setting down the papers unsigned. "Her jewelry, the photo albums, her recipe collection." Patricia's smile tightened. "Those items are part of the estate. I'll be going through everything and distributing mementos as I see fit. You're going to decide what we get to remember our mother by—" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Lana," Emma said pleadingly, "Patricia's being fair. She doesn't have to give us anything." Fair. I stood up, unable to contain myself any longer. Mom's wedding ring is fair. Her grandmother's china is fair. The beach house that's been in our family for 3 generations is fair. Your mother left everything to me, Patricia said coolly. I'm sorry if that upsets you, but it was her choice. Was it, I locked eyes with her, or did you influence a sick woman into signing documents she didn't understand? The room erupted. Ryan accused me of being greedy. Emma cried. David poured another drink. Through it all, Patricia sat serene, playing the wounded stepmother to perfection. I think you should leave, Ryan said finally. You're upsetting everyone. As I gathered my purse, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, check your brother's jacket pocket. I glanced around the room. Everyone was focused on comforting Patricia, who had manufactured some tears for the occasion. Ryan's sport coat hung on the coat rack by the door. Making my way over as if to leave, I casually brushed against the jacket. A small digital recorder fell partially out of the pocket. Ryan had been recording the meeting. Our eyes met across the room. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Doubt, guilt. Then Jennifer tugged on his arm and the moment passed. I left without signing anything, driving aimlessly through the streets where we'd trick-or-treated as kids. My phone rang as I pulled into a gas station. Ryan. You need to come back, he said without preamble. Park around the corner. I'll meet you outside. 10 minutes later, my brother emerged from the shadows of Patricia's perfectly manicured hedge. He looked around nervously before approaching my car. Get in, I said. He slid into the passenger seat, immediately pulling out the digital recorder. I wasn't planning to use this. Jennifer thought it would be good to have a record of the financial arrangements, but after you left... He pressed play. Patricia's voice, different now, without an audience, filled the car. That girl has always been trouble, just like her mother thinking she's better than everyone. Well, she'll learn. They all will. I didn't spend 5 years playing nursemaid to that family to walk away with nothing. The old man was easy enough to handle once I got him on the right medications, made him very suggestible. The wife was harder, but everyone has their breaking point. My hands gripped the steering wheel. She just admitted to drugging Dad. There's more, Ryan said grimly. Harold Whitman's voice came next. The daughter might be a problem. She didn't sign the waiver. Then we make her life difficult until she does. I have connections at her job. A few words about her being unstable, grieving, making mistakes. She'll need that monthly allowance once she's unemployed. And if that doesn't work, then we explore other options. Her mother had a tragic accident. Sometimes these things run in families. The recording clicked off. Ryan and I sat in stunned silence, the implications of Patricia's words hanging between us like a death sentence. "I'm sorry," Ryan said finally. I wanted to believe she was trying to help. Jennifer's been so stressed about money, and she's good at finding people's weaknesses. I said, thinking of Dad vulnerable and grieving, of Mom isolated and afraid. That's how she operates. What do we do? I thought about the trust documents hidden in Margaret's briefcase, the evidence Mom had compiled, the recordings that would prove Patricia's guilt. But I also thought about my brother sitting here in the dark, finally seeing the truth. First, you go back in there and pretend nothing's changed. Sign the papers if you have to. We need Patricia to think she's won. But trust me, Ryan, Mom left us more than just money and property. She left us the truth, and that's going to be Patricia's downfall. As my brother disappeared back into the house, I sat alone in the darkness planning our next move. Patricia had divided our family with her poisoned promises and veiled threats. But she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd underestimated us just as she'd underestimated Mom. The recorder in my pocket held Patricia's confession. Combined with Mom's evidence, we were building a case that would not only reclaim our inheritance, but expose Patricia for the predator she was. The battle lines were drawn. Patricia had her lawyer, her forged will, and her blood money. But I had something more powerful, the truth, a growing collection of evidence, and now my brother's support. One by one, I'd show my family who Patricia really was. And when the moment was right, we'd strike back with the force of all the love and legacy she'd tried to steal. The law offices of Morrison, Chen and Associates occupied a modest suite in downtown Monterey, a far cry from Harold Whitman's glass tower in San Francisco. But what James Morrison lacked in flash, he made up for in reputation. Margaret had recommended him, saying he was the only lawyer she'd trust with something this important. "Ms. Sullivan," Morrison greeted me, his handshake firm despite his 70-something years. "Margaret filled me in on the basics. Please sit down and tell me everything." For the next 2 hours, I laid out the entire case. The forged will, the secret trust, Mom's documentation, the recordings. Morrison took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking sharp questions that showed he was 3 steps ahead of my narrative. "Your stepmother has already filed the will for probate," he said finally. "Whitman fast-tracked it. We have 30 days to contest before the court considers it valid." "Can we stop her?" "We can certainly try. The trust documentation is solid, and Margaret did excellent work ensuring it was properly executed. But Whitman will challenge its validity claim. Your mother wasn't of sound mind when she updated it 6 months ago." "That's ridiculous. Mom was sharp as ever." "I know that, and you know that. But Patricia's been laying groundwork telling people your mother was becoming forgetful. We'll need to counter that narrative with medical records, witness testimonies." He studied me over his reading glasses. "This won't be cheap, Miss Sullivan." I thought of my savings account depleted from helping with Mom's medical bills. "How much?" "My retainer is $25,000. The case could run to 6 figures if Whitman drags it out, which he will." My heart sank. I had maybe $10,000 to my name. Morrison must have seen my expression because he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "However, I believe we have a strong case for fraud and elder abuse. If we can prove that Patricia would be liable for damages, I'm willing to work on a hybrid fee structure, reduced hourly rate, plus contingency on any recovery." "You'd do that." "Your mother catered my daughter's wedding 15 years ago," he said with a small smile. "Refused to charge us full price because we were just starting out. I believe in paying kindness forward." We spent another hour strategizing. Morrison would file an emergency motion to freeze the estate assets, preventing Patricia from selling anything while the case was pending. He'd also demand a full accounting of all financial transactions in the past year, looking for evidence of theft or fraud. "One more thing," Morrison said as I prepared to leave. Patricia's going to fight dirty. Whitman certainly will. Keep documenting everything and be careful. People who forge wills and drug elderly relatives don't usually stop there. His warning echoed in my mind as I drove to work the next morning. I'd taken a job at a local marketing firm after college, working my way up to senior account manager. The office was my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in client presentations and campaign strategies instead of family drama. But when I arrived, my boss Sandra was waiting in my cubicle with an uncomfortable expression. "Lana, we need to talk. I received a concerning call yesterday from someone claiming to be a family friend. They said you've been under tremendous stress and might be having some issues." My blood ran cold. Patricia had already started her campaign. Who called? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They didn't leave a name, but they mentioned you might be pursuing some delusional lawsuit against your stepmother, making wild accusations. They were worried about your mental state affecting your work. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. My stepmother and I are having a legal dispute over my mother's estate. She's trying to discredit me. I can show you the court filings if you'd like. Sandra's expression softened slightly. That won't be necessary. Your work has always been exemplary. But Lana, if this situation starts affecting your performance, it won't. I assured her, though. I wondered how many more calls Patricia would make, how many more seeds of doubt she'd plant. The rest of the week passed in a blur of legal preparations and small acts of sabotage from Patricia. My credit card was mysteriously declined at lunch, the result of a fraud alert someone had called in. My apartment building's manager received a complaint about loud music coming from my unit while I was at work. Even my gym membership was temporarily suspended due to a payment issue that took hours to resolve. Each inconvenience was minor, but the message was clear. Patricia could make my life miserable until I backed down. Friday afternoon, Morrison called with news. The judge granted our emergency motion. Estate assets are frozen pending a full hearing. Patricia can't sell anything, including the beach house. That's great news, I said, feeling the first spark of hope in days. There's more. Whitman filed a counter-motion claiming you're harassing Patricia, making threatening phone calls. They're seeking a restraining order. What I haven't called her once, I know, but she has phone records showing calls from a number registered to your name. Did you lose a phone recently? My mind raced back 2 weeks. My old iPhone, the one I'd replaced after dropping it at Mom's funeral. I thought I'd lost it in the chaos of that day. Patricia must have taken my old phone, I realized. She's been calling herself from it. Morrison sighed. Smart. Devious, but smart. We'll need to prove that. In the meantime, don't contact her directly. Everything goes through me now. That evening, I met Ryan at a dive bar outside town where we were sure Patricia wouldn't have eyes. He looked haggard, the stress of playing double agent wearing on him. She knows something's up, he said, nursing a beer. Keeps asking if I've heard from you, if you've said anything about backing down. And Jennifer... Is Jennifer okay? Patricia's been poisoning her against you. Telling her you're trying to steal from our family, that you've always resented me for being older. Jen's starting to believe it. I reached across the sticky table to squeeze his hand. We're going to get through this. Morrison says the hearing is in 2 weeks. Once the judge sees Mom's evidence... Lana or Ryan interrupted. There's something else. Emma called me crying last night. Patricia told her she found drugs in your old room at Mom's house. Said she was debating whether to report it to the police. That's insane. I haven't lived there in years. I know, but Emma believes it. She thinks you're spiraling, that the lawsuit is some kind of breakdown. He looked miserable. Our family is falling apart. Outside rain began pattering against the bar's grimy windows. I thought about Patricia, probably sitting in Mom's living room right now, surrounded by our family photos, while she plotted her next move. She was systematically destroying my credibility, turning my siblings against me, trying to isolate me just as she'd isolated Mom. But she'd miscalculated. Mom had survived long enough to build her case to leave us the tools we needed. And unlike Mom, I wasn't alone. I had Morris and Margaret, and despite everything, I still had Ryan. The hearing can't come soon enough, I said. Ryan nodded, then pulled out his phone. I recorded another conversation. Patricia was on the phone with someone discussing the beach house. She already has a buyer lined up, cash offer closing as soon as the estate clears. My chest tightened. The beach house where Mom had taught me to make her famous clam chowder, where Dad had pushed us on the rope swing until we screamed with laughter, where 3 generations of memories lived in every weathered board and grain of sand. Patricia was going to sell it to the highest bidder, like it was just another asset. Over my dead body, I muttered. Don't say that, Ryan said sharply. Not even as a joke. You heard what she said on the recording about Mom having an accident. I don't trust her, Lana. I think she's dangerous. Looking at my brother's frightened face, I realized he was right. Patricia had already proven she would drug an elderly man, forge documents, and possibly worse. Morrison had filed our legal challenge, but Patricia wasn't going to fight fair. She never had. The war for our family's legacy was escalating, and Patricia had shown she was willing to destroy anyone who stood in her way. But I had something she didn't. The truth, a growing army of allies, and the kind of determination that only comes from fighting for someone you love. Mom had started this battle from her deathbed. Now it was my turn to finish it. The call from Emma came at 3 a.m, her sobs so intense I could barely understand her words. I fumbled for my bedside lamp, instantly alert. Emma, slow down. What happened? She's evil, Lana. She's pure evil. My sister's voice cracked. I went to talk to her tonight about the kids' college funds just like she promised. But she said, if I don't publicly support her against you, she'll make sure my children never see a penny. I sat up straighter, grabbing the notebook I'd started keeping by my bed to document everything. Tell me exactly what she said. I asked about setting up education trusts like Mom always talked about. Patricia laughed, and said I was being presumptuous, that the money was hers to distribute as she saw fit, and if I sided with you in any way, she'd cut me off completely. Did you record it? No, I was too shocked. But Lana, that's not the worst part. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. She knows things. Private things about David's company, about the SEC investigation last year that was dropped. She said if I don't publicly denounce you, she'll make sure it gets reopened. My mind raced. How could Patricia know about that? The investigation into David's firm had been confidential, cleared without charges. Unless, Emma, has David ever done business with Harold Whitman's firm? A long pause. Yes, Whitman handled the legal response to the SEC. Oh God, Lana. They're all connected, aren't they? Listen to me. Come to my apartment right now. Don't tell David where you're going. I can't. She'll know. She has people watching everyone. Emma's breathing was ragged. I'm scared, Lana. For my kids, for David. What kind of person did Dad bring into our family? After I calmed Emma down and convinced her to try to sleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Patricia's web was more extensive than we'd realized. She wasn't just after Mom's money. She was building a network of control through blackmail and intimidation. The next morning, I arrived at work to find a commotion in the lobby. 2 police officers were speaking with building security, and my stomach dropped when I heard my name. Ms. Sullivan. The older officer approached as I badged in. We need to ask you some questions about a reported theft. What theft? Patricia Morrison filed a report stating several valuable items are missing from your mother's estate. She says you have a key and have been entering the property without permission. That's my childhood home, I protested, and Patricia changed all the locks. I couldn't get in if I wanted to. She has security footage of someone matching your description near the property last Tuesday night. Last Tuesday, I'd been at a client dinner until 11 with 20 witnesses. But explaining that here in front of my colleagues starting to gather would only fuel the gossip Patricia was trying to create. I'd be happy to answer questions with my attorney present, I said calmly, though my hands shook as I handed them Morrison's card. The officers left, but the damage was done. By lunch, whispers followed me through the hallways. The marketing director pulled me aside to express concern about the firm's reputation. My biggest client called to ask if they should be worried about the stability of their account team. Patricia was strangling my professional life with surgical precision. That afternoon, Morrison called with his own bad news. The forensic accountant found something troubling. In the past 6 months, large sums were transferred from your mother's accounts to offshore holdings, nearly $3 million. $3 million. Mom didn't have that kind of money. She did after selling her business last year. The buyer paid cash and the funds were supposed to go into a retirement account. Instead, they vanished into a maze of international banks. Patricia stole it. That's what we need to prove. But Whitman's already spinning it, claiming your mother made risky investments against Patricia's advice. They're painting Patricia as the responsible party trying to salvage what's left. I wanted to scream. Every truth we uncovered, Patricia had already prepared a lie to counter it. She'd been planning this for years, building her fortress of deception brick by brick, while Mom fought cancer and we grieved Dad's death. That evening, I drove past the beach house, needing to see it even from a distance. The sight that greeted me made my blood boil. A for sale sign stood in the front yard, Patricia's smiling realtor photo plastered across it. Below, in bold letters, "Coming soon, exclusive listing." She was so confident she'd win, she was already advertising our family's legacy to the highest bidder. I parked down the street and walked closer, careful to stay off the property. The garden Mom had tended for 20 years was already dying, her prized roses wilting from neglect. The hand-painted mailbox we'd made in Girl Scouts had been replaced with a generic metal one. "She's erasing us," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Mrs. Chen, Mom's next-door neighbor for 30 years. The elderly woman looked at the house with sad eyes. "Your mother would be heartbroken," she continued. "That woman Patricia, she came by last week, told me I'd better be prepared for construction noise. She's planning to tear down the house and build condos." Tear it down. The words stuck in my throat. Said the land was worth more than some old house. When I reminded her of the historical protection status, she laughed. Said money could change any zoning law. Mrs. Chen invited me in for tea, and we sat in her kitchen overlooking the beach. She'd watched our family grow up, attended every birthday party and barbecue Mom had thrown. "Your mother knew something was wrong," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "The last time we spoke, she asked me to watch out for you children. Said Patricia was dangerous, but she couldn't prove it yet. Did Mom say anything else?" "She gave me something." Mrs. Chen disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a small wrapped package. "Said to give it to you if anything happened to her. I thought she was being dramatic, but now..." Inside was a USB drive and a note in Mom's handwriting. "The truth is in the walls. Look where we hid from storms." My hands trembled. When we were kids, during particularly bad storms, Mom would gather us in the beach house's old pantry. It was the most structurally sound room, she'd said, built by her grandmother with reinforced walls. We'd huddle there with flashlights and hot chocolate telling stories until the wind died down. "Thank you," I told Mrs. Chen, clutching the package. "This means everything." As I drove home, my phone exploded with texts. A group message from Patricia to the entire family, including aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "Dear family, it saddens me to share that Lana is suffering from severe mental health issues following her mother's passing. She's made wild accusations, harassed me continuously, and now the police are involved due to theft. I'm arranging for professional help, but please don't enable her delusions. With love, Patricia." The responses poured in immediately. Cousins expressing shock, aunts offering prayers, Uncle Tom saying he always knew I was unstable like my mother's side of the family. Each message was another nail in the coffin Patricia was building around my reputation. I pulled over my hands, shaking too hard to drive. She'd sent this to everyone, poisoning the entire extended family against me. By morning, it would be on social media, spreading like wildfire through our small town. But as I sat there watching the sunset paint the sky the same orange and pink as that last evening with Mom, something hardened inside me. Patricia thought she could isolate me, destroy my reputation, steal my inheritance, and erase my family's legacy. She was wrong. I had Mom's final message, a USB drive that might contain everything we needed, and a clue about secrets hidden in the walls of our family home. Patricia might have changed the locks, but she didn't know about the loose board in the back fence that Ryan and I had used to sneak out as teenagers. She didn't know about the storm shelter's hidden compartments. She didn't know that Mom's greatest strength had always been her ability to plan ahead. The battle was escalating and Patricia was throwing everything she had at me. But Mom had taught me that sometimes, when a storm is raging, the best thing to do is find shelter and wait. Then when your enemy thinks you're beaten, you emerge stronger than ever. Tonight, I'd go home and plug in that USB drive. Tomorrow, I'd find a way into the beach house. And soon, very soon, Patricia would learn that hell hath no fury like a daughter, defending her mother's legacy. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the USB drive in my hand. Such a small thing to hold potentially explosive secrets. Taking a deep breath, I inserted it into the port. A password prompt appeared immediately. Of course, Mom would protect it. I tried the obvious ones first, our birthday's dad's name, the beach house address. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the note, "The truth is in the walls. Look where we hid from storms." During those storms, Mom would always tell us the same story about her grandmother building the house. "She carved her initials in the pantry wall," Mom would say, "right next to the date she finished building. Our family's strength is in those walls." I typed MGS 1924, Martha Grace Sullivan 1924. The screen unlocked, revealing dozens of files, videos, documents, photos, all meticulously organized by date. My heart pounded as I clicked on a video file labeled, "If you're watching this." Mom's face appeared on screen, thinner than I remembered, but her eyes blazing with determination. The timestamp showed it was recorded 2 weeks before her death. "My darling Lana," she began, and tears immediately blurred my vision. "If you're watching this, then Patricia has done exactly what I feared. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop her while I was alive, but I was more afraid of what she might do to you children if I confronted her directly." Mom explained how Patricia had systematically isolated her, intercepting mail-blocking phone calls, telling the doctors that Mom was becoming paranoid and delusional. "She's been drugging me," Mom said matter-of-factly, "switching my medications to make me appear confused. I've been documenting everything." The next video was grainy security footage from a hidden camera Mom had installed in her bedroom. It showed Patricia entering at night, switching pills in Mom's medication organizer. Another video caught her going through Mom's desk, photographing documents. A third showed her on the phone saying, "The old woman won't last much longer. I've made sure of that." I had to pause running to the bathroom as nausea overwhelmed me. Patricia hadn't just stolen from Mom, she'd hastened her death. Returning to the laptop, I found financial records showing exactly how Patricia had moved the money. She'd convinced Mom to sign power of attorney documents while heavily medicated, then systematically drained the accounts. But Mom had been smarter than Patricia realized. She'd hired a forensic accountant of her own, paying cash, documenting every transaction. The most damning evidence was in a folder labeled Patricia's Past. Mom's private investigator had been thorough. Patricia's real name wasn't even Patricia Morrison. It was Patricia Walton. She'd changed it after her first husband's death in Nevada. The investigator had found 3 other elderly men Patricia had cared for over the past 15 years. All had died within 2 years of meeting her. All had left her substantial inheritances. All had families who suspected foul play but couldn't prove it. There was even a recorded conversation between Patricia and someone named Victor. "This one's taking longer than expected," Patricia complained. "The daughter is too attentive." "Patience," Victor replied. "You've waited this long. A few more months won't matter. Once you have everything, we move on to the next mark in Florida." My hands shook as I copied everything onto multiple drives. This wasn't just about our family anymore. Patricia was a serial predator, and we had the evidence to stop her. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Morrison's office. He went pale as he reviewed the evidence. "This changes everything," he said. "We're not just talking about civil fraud anymore. This is criminal, murder, possibly. What do we do? First, we make copies of everything. Then we take this to the district attorney. But Lana, once we do that, Patricia will know we have it. She'll either run or..." He didn't finish the sentence. "Or she'll accelerate whatever plan she has for me," I completed. Morrison nodded gravely. "I think you should stay with someone for a while. Is there anywhere Patricia wouldn't think to look for you?" I thought about it. Patricia had so thoroughly researched our family, she probably knew about all our friends and regular haunts. Then I remembered Sam, my college roommate, who'd moved back to town just last month. Patricia couldn't know about her yet. That afternoon, while Morrison prepared the criminal complaint, I met with Margaret to plan our next move, getting into the beach house, to find whatever Mom had hidden in the walls. "The fence board's still loose," Margaret asked with a knowing smile. "Your mom mentioned you and Ryan used to sneak out that way." "You knew." "Honey, every mother knows. She just chose not to fix it." Margaret pulled out a hand-drawn map. "Your mom gave me this. Shows all the hiding spots her grandmother built into the house. Apparently Martha Sullivan didn't trust banks after the Depression. The map revealed hidden compartments I'd never known existed. Behind the pantry panels, under the floorboards in the master bedroom, even a false bottom in the old chest in the attic." "When do we go?" I asked. "Tonight. Patricia has her book club on Wednesdays, never misses it, has to maintain her image as the grieving widow." Margaret's expression hardened. "We'll have about 2 hours." That evening, I parked 3 blocks away and approached the beach house on foot. The neighborhood was quiet, most of the summer residents gone until next season. Margaret was already at the loose fence board, dressed in dark clothes, like we were in some spy movie. If the situation weren't so serious, I would have laughed. The board came free easily and we slipped through. Being in the backyard hit me with a wave of grief so strong I had to stop and breathe. The tire swing still hung from the oak tree. Mom's herb garden, though neglected, still perfumed the air with rosemary and thyme. "Focus," Margaret whispered, and we made our way to the back door. The spare key wasn't under the fake rock where Mom always kept it, but Patricia didn't know about the backup location, inside the old birdhouse Emma had made in shop class. My hands trembled as I retrieved it, half expecting alarms to blare when I turned it in the lock. Inside the house smelled wrong. Patricia's heavy perfume masked the familiar scents of sea salt and Mom's lavender potpourri. The furniture was rearranged family photos replaced with generic coastal art. It was our house, but not our home anymore. We went straight to the pantry. Using Margaret's map, I found the seam in the wood paneling. It took some prying, but finally a section popped free, revealing a metal box built into the wall. Inside were more documents. Original deeds to the property going back to 1894. Mom's real will properly notarized and witnessed. And photographs I'd never seen before Patricia, with her previous victims' newspaper clippings about their deaths, even what looked like forged documents from those estates. "Your mom was building a case," Margaret breathed. She knew Patricia would try this with other families. A car door slammed outside. We froze listening. Footsteps on the porch, then keys in the lock. Patricia was home early. "Hide," Margaret hissed, but there was nowhere to go. The pantry only had one exit and Patricia's heels were already clicking across the kitchen floor. I grabbed the metal box and tried to replace the panel, but there wasn't time. The pantry door swung open and Patricia stood there, her book club smile replaced with cold fury. Well, she said, pulling out her phone. "Breaking and entering. The police will be very interested in this." But as she dialed, her eyes landed on the open panel, the metal box in my hands. Her face went white. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "Where you'll never think to look," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Just like you never thought to look for the cameras Mom hid, or the recordings, or the evidence about Walter Henderson, James McBride, and Carl Denton. At the mention of those names, her previous victims, Patricia's mask finally slipped completely. The suburban stepmother facade cracked, revealing the predator beneath. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she snarled. "I've destroyed stronger people than you." "Maybe," I said, clutching the box tighter, "but they didn't have what I have." "What's that?" "A mother who loved me enough to fight back from beyond the grave." Patricia lunged for the box, but Margaret stepped between us. For a 70-year-old woman, she moved remarkably fast, using Patricia's momentum to send her stumbling into the shelving. "Run!" Margaret shouted. We bolted through the kitchen, Patricia's enraged screams following us. I heard her on the phone, not with the police, but with someone else. "She has it! Get here now!" We made it to my car, hearts pounding the metal box clutched between us like a lifeline. As I started the engine, a black SUV screeched around the corner. Victor, I realized, Patricia's partner in crime. "Drive," Margaret commanded. I floored it, tires squealing as we raced through the quiet streets. The SUV followed, gaining ground. But I knew these roads like my own heartbeat, every shortcut and hidden turn from years of teenage adventures. We lost them in the maze of beach access roads, finally pulling into Sam's garage just as her automatic door closed behind us. Safe for the moment, Margaret and I looked at each other then at the box that held enough evidence to destroy Patricia's carefully constructed life. "Your mother," Margaret said with fierce pride, "was one hell of a woman." I thought about Mom fighting alone for so long, gathering evidence even as Patricia poisoned her. She'd known she might not survive, but she'd made sure justice would. "Yes," I said, tears finally coming. "She was." Tomorrow we'd take everything to the authorities. Patricia and Victor would try to run, but we had their names, their photos, their entire criminal history. The war for our family's legacy was entering its final phase. And thanks to Mom's hidden evidence, we were finally winning. The district attorney's office occupied the top floor of the county courthouse, its windows overlooking Monterey Bay. Morrison had arranged an emergency meeting, and by 9 a.m. we were seated across from DA Caroline Foster, a woman known for her tenacity in pursuing elder abuse cases. "This is extensive," she said, reviewing the evidence we'd compiled. "If even half of this is verified, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Murder might be harder to prove without exhumation orders, but fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, those are solid." "What about the other victims?" I asked. "The men in Nevada, Arizona, and Oregon. I'll contact those jurisdictions immediately. If Patricia Walton or Morrison or whatever name she's using is part of an interstate crime ring?" Foster's eyes gleamed with prosecutorial fervor. This could be one of the biggest elder fraud cases in California history. As we discussed next steps, Morrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "Patricia's attorney just filed an emergency injunction. They're claiming you stole privileged documents and demanding their return." "Privileged documents about her past murders," I said incredulously. "They don't know what you have yet," Foster interjected. "They're fishing. Don't respond. My office will handle this from here." Leaving the courthouse, I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The wheels of justice were turning, but Patricia was still free, still dangerous. That afternoon brought unexpected support from 3 sources. The first was a call from Mom's physician, Dr. Martinez. "I've been reviewing your mother's medical records," she said. "After what you've uncovered, certain things make sense now. The rapid decline, the medication interactions, I couldn't explain. I'd like to provide a statement to the authorities." "You believe Patricia was poisoning her—" "I believe your mother's symptoms were inconsistent with her diagnosis. I said as much at the time, but Patricia insisted I was overthinking it. She was very involved in your mother's care, too involved in retrospect." The second ally came in the form of Mom's lawyer's assistant, June, who appeared at my apartment that evening with a box of files. "I probably shouldn't be doing this," she said, glancing nervously down the hallway. "But your mother was a good woman, and what that witch is doing isn't right." "What is this?" Copies of every document Patricia submitted to our office. Mr. Peterson doesn't know I made them, but I had a feeling something was off. Look at the dates on these signatures. I spread the papers across my kitchen table. 3 different documents, all supposedly signed by Mom, all dated on days when Mom had been hospitalized and heavily sedated. She couldn't have signed these. I breathed. I was with her in the hospital on all 3 dates. That's what I thought. There's more. Patricia came to the office last week asking about backdating documents. Mr. Peterson refused, but she said she'd find someone who wouldn't. The third ally was the most surprising. My phone rang at 8 p.m., the caller ID showing Harold Whitman's office. Ms. Sullivan. This is Robert Klein. I'm an associate at Whitman's firm. I need to speak with you urgently, but not on this line. Can you meet me at the 24-hour diner on Lighthouse Avenue in an hour? Every instinct screamed trap, but something in his voice made me agree. I brought Ryan with me for safety, and we found Klein in a back booth nervously shredding napkins. I could lose my license for this, he began without preamble. But I can't be part of this anymore. Whitman's been helping Patricia hide assets, creating shell companies, even facilitating contact with unsavory individuals. Why tell me? Ryan asked suspiciously. Klein pulled out a flash drive. Because my grandmother died last year, Alzheimer's. But before she got sick, she met a nice woman at her senior center who offered to help with her finances. His voice cracked. By the time we realized what was happening, everything was gone. The woman disappeared, but I never forgot her face. Imagine my shock when Patricia Morrison walked into our office. The flash drive contained emails between Whitman and Patricia discussing strategy. One thread made my blood run cold. If the daughter becomes too problematic, we may need to consider alternative solutions. Victor has experience with making problems disappear. They're planning to kill me, I said flatly. Klein nodded miserably. Whitman's in too deep now. He helped with the previous estates, took his cut. If Patricia goes down, she'll take him with her. They're desperate. Will you testify? Ryan asked. I've already contacted the State Bar Association, but you need to be careful. Victor isn't just muscle. He's got a network of people who specialize in permanent solutions. We left the diner with Klein's flash drive and a growing sense of urgency. Patricia wasn't just fighting to keep stolen money anymore. She was fighting to stay out of prison. Cornered predators were the most dangerous kind. Back at Sam's house, where I'd been staying, we found an unexpected gathering. Margaret was there along with Mrs. Chen, Dr. Martinez, and 3 other women I recognized as Mom's friends from her book club. We've been talking, Margaret announced. Patricia fooled us all for too long. But your mother saw through her and we failed to listen. We won't make that mistake again. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. I've been documenting everything happening at the beach house. The late-night visits, the trucks removing items, the strange people coming and going. I have photographs, license plates, dates, and times. I've been in touch with families from Patricia's past, added Ruth Mom's oldest friend. The pattern is always the same. Charm the elderly victim, isolate them from family, take control of finances, then ensure they don't live long enough to change their minds. We want to help, Dr. Martinez said simply. Your mother deserved better. We all failed her, but we can help bring her justice now. Looking around the room at these women all in their 60s and 70s, all determined to right a wrong, I felt something shift. Patricia had made a crucial error in her campaign against me. She'd assumed that once she'd fooled Mom's friends, they'd stay fooled. But she'd underestimated the power of female friendship and the fury of women who discovered they'd been deceived. There's something else, Margaret said, pulling out a manila envelope. I received this today from a lawyer in Reno. Apparently your mother contacted him months ago. Inside was a notarized statement from Walter Henderson's sister, the one Patricia had claimed died in a car accident. She was very much alive, living under an assumed name, and ready to testify about how Patricia had threatened her life if she didn't drop the inheritance dispute. This is huge, Ryan breathed. She's not just a con artist, she's a serial killer who uses the legal system as her weapon. My phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. DA issuing arrest warrants tomorrow morning. Patricia and Victor both. Stay safe tonight. But Patricia wasn't waiting for tomorrow. As we celebrated this small victory, Sam rushed in from the front room where she'd been watching the security monitor. "There's a black SUV circling the block," she said. "It slowed down in front of the house 3 times. We killed the lights and peered through the curtains. Sure enough, Victor's vehicle crept past again, this time stopping directly in front. The passenger door opened and Patricia stepped out, no longer bothering to hide her intentions. She stood on the sidewalk staring at the house, her phone pressed to her ear. My phone rang a moment later. Unknown number. Against everyone's protests, I answered. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble," Patricia said, her voice eerily calm. "But I'm willing to make a deal. Return everything you took, sign the estate waiver, and leave town tonight. You can start fresh somewhere else with enough money to make it worth your while." "How much did you offer Walter Henderson's sister before you tried to kill her?" I asked. Silence. Then, "You have no idea what you're playing with, little girl. I've survived things that would break you. Last chance. Take the deal." "No." "Then you'll join your mother sooner than expected. Sweet dreams, Lana." The line went dead. The SUV remained outside for another 10 minutes before finally pulling away. "We need to call the police," Sam insisted. But Margaret was already dialing. "I'm calling my grandson. He's a Marine home on leave with several of his buddies. They've been looking for a way to serve and protect even while stateside." Within an hour, Sam's house had become a fortress. Marines at every entrance, surveillance equipment, monitoring the street, and a direct line to the police department. Patricia had expected to intimidate a grieving daughter. Instead, she'd awakened a small army of people who'd loved my mother and were determined to see justice done. As I lay in bed that night, surrounded by protectors, both expected and unexpected, I thought about the web Patricia had spun and how it was finally unraveling. Tomorrow, she'd be in custody. Her victims would have their day in court, and Mom would finally have justice. But tonight, Patricia was still out there, desperate and dangerous. Victor was probably planning their escape route. Whitman was likely shredding documents. The final battle was coming with the dawn. I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness. "Almost there, Mom. We're almost there." The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m., but by noon the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Word of Patricia's arrest that morning had spread like wildfire through our small coastal town. The woman who'd charmed her way into charity boards and book clubs was revealed as a serial predator who'd left a trail of dead husbands and empty bank accounts across 4 states. Morrison met me at the security checkpoint, his usually calm demeanor replaced with barely contained excitement. The judge granted our emergency motion for a preliminary injunction. Patricia can't touch any assets and the beach house sale is frozen. But that's not the best news. "What is?" Patricia's partner, Victor, flipped. Turns out he's been keeping records of everything insurance against Patricia turning on him. The FBI just took custody of 12 boxes of evidence going back 15 years. We made our way to courtroom 3, where Judge Helen Rothschild presided. I'd researched her extensively, a former prosecutor known for her intolerance of financial exploitation and elder abuse. If we were casting a judge for this case, she'd be perfect. The courtroom was packed. Ryan sat with Margaret and Mom's friends in the row behind us. Emma had come too, finally free of Patricia's financial threats. Even Mrs. Chen was there, clutching a folder of photographs she'd taken. Patricia entered in an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly styled hair now flat, her makeup absent. Without her armor of designer clothes and careful grooming, she looked smaller, older, meaner. Her eyes found mine across the room, and the hatred there was pure and undiluted. Whitman sat at the defense table, his usual swagger replaced with the nervous energy of a man whose career was circling the drain. The state bar had already suspended his license pending investigation, and criminal charges were being prepared. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began. We're here on multiple matters regarding the estate of Catherine Sullivan and criminal charges against Patricia Morrison, also known as Patricia Walton, Patricia Henderson, and Patricia McBride. What followed was a systematic destruction of Patricia's carefully crafted image. The prosecutor presented evidence of forged documents, fraudulent bank transfers, and recorded conversations where Patricia discussed her plans to handle my mother. The defendant didn't just steal from Catherine Sullivan, the prosecutor stated. She systematically manipulated her medications, and hastened her death to prevent any changes to estate documents she'd fraudulently created. Whitman tried to object, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally, but Judge Rothschild shut him down. Counselor evidence of criminal activity isn't protected by attorney-client privilege, as you well know, or should know if you still have a license to practice law next week. The first witness was Dr. Martinez, who detailed Mom's suspicious symptoms and Patricia's insistence on managing all medications. She presented pharmacy records showing Patricia had filled prescriptions that were never ordered by any doctor. In my professional opinion, Dr. Martinez concluded Catherine Sullivan's death was accelerated by approximately 6 to 8 months due to medication interactions that served no therapeutic purpose. Patricia's mask of composure cracked slightly. She whispered furiously to Whitman, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Next came Klein Whitman's former associate who'd entered witness protection after death threats from Victor's associates. Via video link, he detailed the conspiracy between Whitman and Patricia, including plans to eliminate me if necessary. Ms. Morrison stated, and I quote, "The daughter is becoming too much of a problem. We may need Victor to arrange an accident, make it look like she was depressed over her mother's death." Mr. Whitman responded that it would cost extra, but could be arranged. The gallery gasped. Emma started crying. Even the court reporter looked shocked. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source, Patricia's own daughter from her first marriage. Lisa Walton, now 35, had flown in from Maine, where she'd been hiding for over a decade. "My father died when I was 20. She said, her voice trembling but determined. "Patricia had been drugging him for months, just like she did to the others. I tried to warn people, but she threatened to kill me too. Said she'd make it look like suicide, that everyone would believe a grieving daughter had followed her father." "Did you report these threats?" the prosecutor asked. "I tried, but Mother had connections everywhere. The police said I was hysterical. The lawyer said I was bitter about my inheritance. So I ran. Changed my name, started over. Let her think she'd won." Lisa looked directly at Patricia. "I'm done running. These families deserve justice. My father deserves justice." Patricia shot to her feet. "You ungrateful brat, I gave you everything." "You gave me nightmares," Lisa shot back. "You gave me a lifetime of therapy. You gave me the image of my father dying while you counted his money." Judge Rothschild had to call for order as the gallery erupted. Patricia was forcibly seated by bailiffs, her careful mask completely shattered. When it was Patricia's turn to testify, Whitman tried to prevent it, but she shoved him aside. "I want to tell my side," she declared. What followed was a masterclass in narcissistic delusion. Patricia painted herself as a misunderstood caregiver, a woman who'd sacrificed everything for ungrateful families. She claimed Mom had begged her to take control of the finances, that the previous husbands had all been sick anyway, that their families were greedy vultures who didn't deserve inheritances. "I earned every penny," she declared. "Do you know what it's like to sit by someone's bedside for months, to clean up their messes, listen to their complaints, pretend to care about their boring stories?" "So you admit you were pretending," the prosecutor pounced. Patricia realized her mistake too late. "That's not what I meant." "What about the recording where you discuss making Lana Sullivan have an accident?" "That was taken out of context." "The context of planning a murder." Whitman tried to intervene, but Judge Rothschild was having none of it. "Your client chose to testify against counsel's advice. She'll answer the questions." The prosecutor presented Victor's testimony next, delivered via written statement as he was in federal custody. He detailed 15 years of partnership with Patricia, targeting wealthy elderly victims with no close family or estranged children. He provided names, dates, and amounts stolen. The total exceeded $20 million across 12 victims. The defendant would identify targets at senior centers, grief support groups, and hospital volunteer programs. The prosecutor read, "She specifically looked for recent widowers with substantial assets and family conflicts she could exploit." As the evidence mounted, Patricia's composure completely evaporated. She began ranting about ungrateful families, stupid marks who deserved to be fleeced, and how she was smarter than everyone in the room. "You think you've won?" she screamed at me. "Your mother was pathetic, crying about her precious children who barely visited. She was so easy to manipulate, so desperate for someone to care." "My mother saw through you," I said, standing despite Morrison's attempt to keep me seated. "She gathered evidence, protected her family, and ensured you'd face justice. You thought you were manipulating her, but she was building your prison cell document by document." Judge Rothschild gavelled for order, but I wasn't finished. "You took advantage of grieving people at their most vulnerable moments. You destroyed families for money, but you failed with mine. My mother's love was stronger than your greed. Her courage was greater than your cruelty. And now you'll spend the rest of your life remembering that Catherine Sullivan beat you." The courtroom erupted in applause before the judge could stop it. Patricia lunged toward me but was restrained by bailiffs. As they dragged her out, she was still screaming threats and profanities, her true nature finally exposed for all to see. Judge Rothschild's ruling was swift and decisive. The forged will was invalidated. The trust documents were confirmed as legitimate. All stolen assets were to be returned immediately pending criminal prosecution. Patricia was remanded without bail as a flight risk and danger to the community. Furthermore, the judge stated, "This court finds sufficient evidence to warrant investigation into all previous deaths connected to the defendant. I'm recommending federal prosecution under RICO statutes for operating an interstate criminal enterprise." As we left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, but I had only one statement. My mother fought to protect not just her own family, but all of Patricia's victims. Today's victory belongs to her and to everyone who's ever stood up to a predator. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about preventing future victims. My mother understood that. She saved lives by refusing to be silent. That evening, our family gathered at the beach house for the first time since Mom's death. The locks had been changed back, Patricia's gaudy furniture removed. We sat in Mom's living room looking at photo albums, sharing memories beginning to heal. "She did it," Emma said softly, holding a picture of Mom from last Christmas. "Even dying, even scared, she protected us." Ryan raised a glass of Mom's favorite wine. "To Catherine Sullivan, mother protector and the smartest woman who ever lived." We toasted and cried and laughed, the sound carrying out over the ocean. Somewhere, Mom was smiling. The beach house was safe. Her children were united, and Patricia Morrison would never hurt another family again. But the story wasn't quite over. Patricia's network was vast, her crimes spanning decades. The trial would be long, the revelations shocking. And somewhere in federal custody, Victor was singing like a canary, revealing secrets that would shake several states' legal systems. For tonight, though, we were home. Safe in the house our great-grandmother built, surrounded by love she'd never imagined, protected by a mother's courage that transcended death itself. Justice had been served, but more importantly, love had won. The call came at 6 a.m. 3 days after the hearing. I fumbled for my phone, still groggy from the first good night's sleep I'd had in weeks. "Lana, it's Morrison. Patricia's lawyer is dead." I sat bolt upright. "What, how?" "Single car accident last night. Drove off Highway 1 into the ocean. But here's the thing. Witnesses saw another vehicle force him off the road." My blood ran cold. Whitman knew too much. With Patricia in custody and Victor cooperating with federal authorities, someone was cleaning house. "There's more," Morrison continued. The FBI raided Whitman's office and home this morning. They found a hidden safe with documents going back 20 years. Patricia wasn't just part of a criminal network. She was middle management. There's someone above her, someone who's been running this operation across the entire country. I met Morrison at his office where FBI Special Agent Sarah Torres was waiting. She was tall, severe-looking, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. "Miss Sullivan, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room," she began. Patricia Morrison is part of a sophisticated criminal organization that targets elderly Americans. We're talking about billions in stolen assets over 3 decades. Your mother didn't just expose Patricia, she exposed the entire network. Who's running it? Someone Patricia called the architect in encrypted communications. We've been tracking this person for years, always one step behind. But your mother's evidence, combined with what we found in Whitman's safe, is giving us our first real leads. She showed me photographs from Whitman's files, Patricia with various elderly men, all now deceased. But in the background of several photos was the same figure. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s, silver-haired, always partially obscured, but clearly watching. We believe this is the architect. He recruits people like Patricia, trains them, places them in communities, and takes a percentage of everything they steal. It's franchised elder abuse. The scope of it made me dizzy. Mom hadn't just been protecting our family. She'd stumbled onto one of the largest criminal conspiracies in the country. That afternoon, Patricia's financial records revealed the full extent of her theft. $3 million from Mom's estate was just the latest. Over 15 years, she'd stolen nearly $18 million. But here was the shocking part: she only kept about 30%. The rest went upstream to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Cyprus. "Follow the money," Agent Torres said. "That's always been our motto, and your mother gave us the thread to unravel it all." But Patricia wasn't going down without a fight. From her jail cell, she was somehow still pulling strings. Ryan received a call that afternoon from his employer. Anonymous allegations about embezzlement had been made against him. Emma's husband, David, found his business under sudden audit from the IRS. Even Sam, who'd sheltered me, discovered her credit cards had been mysteriously maxed out. "She's got people on the outside," I told Agent Torres. "This is coordinated harassment." "We know. We're tracking several associates who are still active. But here's what Patricia doesn't know. Victor gave us everything: names, addresses, bank accounts. We're freezing assets and making arrests across 6 states. The next bombshell came from an unexpected source. Lisa Walton, Patricia's daughter, reached out with more information. She'd been documenting her mother's crimes for years, building her own insurance policy. "Mother always said I was too much like her," Lisa told me over a secure video call. She meant it as a compliment. But watching her destroy families, seeing the pain she caused, I swore I'd never be like that. I'd been gathering evidence since I was 25, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. Lisa's files included recordings of Patricia discussing murders she'd committed, bribes she'd paid, and officials she'd corrupted. One recording made my stomach turn. "The Sullivan woman is tougher than expected," Patricia said to someone. "But I've handled tougher. Remember the doctor in Phoenix who figured out what I was doing? That house fire was ruled accidental, wasn't it?" "You always were creative," a man's voice replied. The architect, I realized. "But don't get sloppy. The daughter seems smart. If she becomes too much trouble..." "I know what to do. I've done it before." They were discussing murdering me as casually as ordering lunch. But the investigation was moving faster than Patricia's remaining network could react. Federal agents raided properties in 12 states, arresting over 40 people connected to the conspiracy. Each arrest led to more evidence, more names, more victims coming forward. The story went national. "The grandmother killer," headlines, screamed with Patricia's mugshot next to photos of her victims. Families who'd been told their elderly relatives died naturally were demanding exhumations. Prosecutors from multiple jurisdictions were building cases. In the middle of this chaos, I received an unexpected visitor. A well-dressed woman in her 50s appeared at Morrison's office, requesting to speak with me privately. "My name is Dorothy Chen," she said. "No relation to your neighbor. I represent certain interests that are concerned about the current situation." "What interests?" "Let's say there are people who benefited from the architect's organization but weren't actively involved in the crimes. Wealthy families who inherited estates without asking too many questions about why their elderly relatives changed their wills. They're willing to make substantial restitution to avoid prosecution." "Are you trying to buy me off?" "I'm trying to prevent a war," she said candidly. "The architect has resources you can't imagine. Push too hard and people will start having accidents. But if certain accommodations can be made—" "Get out," I said, standing. "My mother is dead because of these people. Dozens of elderly victims were murdered. You want accommodation? Here it is: full cooperation with federal authorities, complete financial restitution to all victims' families, and testimony against the architect. Otherwise, I'll personally ensure every single person who benefited from this network is exposed and prosecuted." Dorothy Chen left, but her visit told me something important. The architect was scared. For the first time in decades, his network was exposed, his people were being arrested, and his careful system was crumbling. That evening, Agent Torres called with stunning news. "We got him, the architect. Real name Jonathan Ashford, former estate planning attorney who lost his license in 1992 for ethics violations. He's been running this network ever since, teaching people like Patricia how to identify Mark's forged documents and literally get away with murder." "Where is he now?" "In custody in Miami. He was trying to board a private jet to a non-extradition country. But here's the beautiful irony. He was turned in by one of his own people who wanted the reward money. No honor among thieves." As news of Ashford's arrest spread, more victims came forward. The FBI set up a hotline that received over 3,000 calls in the first week. Families who'd suspected foul play but couldn't prove it. Elderly survivors who'd been threatened into silence. Estate attorneys who'd noticed patterns but were too scared to speak up. Patricia, realizing her protector was gone and her network was destroyed, finally broke. She offered to testify against everyone in exchange for life in prison instead of the death penalty. The federal prosecutor agreed, and Patricia began confessing to crimes we hadn't even discovered yet. 16 murders across 4 states. 38 elderly victims who died of natural causes after Patricia entered their lives. Hundreds of millions in stolen assets. Bribed police officers, corrupted judges, and compromised medical examiners who'd covered up the crimes. "Your mother was supposed to be easy," Patricia told investigators the recording played for me later. "Recently widowed, estranged from her ex-husband, children with their own lives. But she was smart, too smart. She figured out what I was doing and started documenting everything. I had to accelerate the timeline." "So you increased her medications." "I gave her enough to make her confused, but not enough to kill her outright. That would have been suspicious, but she kept fighting. Even drugged, she was gathering evidence, hiding documents, protecting her brats. I've never had a Mark fight back like that." "Is that why you killed her?" Patricia laughed, a cold sound that chilled me. "I didn't kill her. The cancer did that. I just helped it along. Made sure she didn't have time to expose me. But she'd already done the damage, hadn't she? Left all that evidence for her precious daughter to find." Listening to Patricia confess to hastening my mother's death with such casual cruelty, I had to leave the room. Morrison found me in the parking lot sobbing against my car. "She won," he said gently. "Your mother won. Patricia's going to die in prison. The network is destroyed. Hundreds of families will get justice because Catherine Sullivan refused to be a victim." He was right. Mom had won, but the victory felt hollow without her here to see it. As I drove home, my phone rang. Ryan. "Turn on the news," he said, "now." I pulled over and found a live stream on my phone. A breaking news alert filled the screen. FBI announces largest elder fraud bust in U.S. history. 127 arrests in 23 states. Criminal network targeting. Elderly Americans completely dismantled. The anchor continued. The investigation codenamed Operation Inheritance was sparked by evidence compiled by Catherine Sullivan of Monterey, California, who documented an elaborate scheme while dying of cancer. Her daughter, Lana Sullivan, found the evidence and brought it to authorities, leading to today's historic arrests. They showed a photo of Mom from last Christmas, smiling at the camera surrounded by her children. She looked frail but determined, as if she knew this moment would come. Catherine Sullivan saved countless lives, Agent Torres said in the press conference. While battling cancer and being systematically poisoned by her caregiver, she built a case that exposed a nationwide conspiracy. She is a true American hero. I sat in my car crying again, but this time they were tears of pride. Mom hadn't just saved our family, she'd saved hundreds of families. Her final act of love had rippled out across the country, bringing justice to victims who'd given up hope. My phone buzzed with texts from reporters wanting interviews, families wanting to thank me, producers wanting to buy the movie rights. I ignored them all and drove to the cemetery. Standing at Mom's grave, I told her everything. About Patricia's arrest, Ashford's capture, the network's destruction, about the families who would get justice because of her courage. "You did it, Mom," I whispered to the headstone. "You saved them all." The wind picked up rustling through the flowers we'd planted. For just a moment, I could swear I smelled her perfume, felt her presence. Patricia Morrison thought she'd found the perfect victim in Catherine Sullivan. Instead, she'd found her downfall. And in trying to steal our family's legacy, she'd given Mom the greatest legacy of all, the destruction of a criminal empire and justice for its victims. The war was over. We'd won. And somewhere I knew Mom was finally at peace. The federal investigation had moved with stunning speed. Within 48 hours of Patricia's full confession, law enforcement agencies across 23 states were executing search warrants, freezing assets, and making arrests. I watched from Agent Torres's makeshift command center in San Francisco as the operation unfolded on multiple screens. "This is unprecedented," Torres told me, her usual composure cracking with excitement. "Your mother's documentation gave us the roadmap, but Patricia's confession is filling in all the gaps. She's naming names, providing account numbers, detailing murder methods." "Why is she cooperating so fully?" I asked. "Because she's terrified. With Ashford arrested and her network collapsed, she knows she's vulnerable. Other crime organizations don't appreciate this kind of heat. She's safer in federal custody than on the street." The evidence room was staggering. Boxes upon boxes of documents, hard drives, and physical evidence recovered from Patricia's properties and those of her associates. Each box represented destroyed families, stolen futures, lives cut short. Detective Maria Gonzalez from the Monterey Police Department had been assigned to coordinate the local aspects of the case. She'd been the one to arrest Patricia that morning 3 weeks ago, and now she was helping piece together the California murders. "We're exhuming your father," she told me gently. Patricia's confession indicated she may have accelerated his death too. "I'm sorry, but we need to know." The thought of Dad being another victim hit hard. We'd believed his cancer had taken him, but now everything was suspect. "Do what you need to do," I managed. That afternoon, Ryan and Emma joined me at the police station. We were asked to review items recovered from Patricia's storage unit, identifying what belonged to our family. The unit was a macabre trophy room, jewelry, photo albums, and personal items from dozens of victims. Mom's wedding ring. Emma gasped, picking up the distinctive Celtic band. Patricia said it was lost at the hospital. We found more of Mom's things. Her grandmother's cameo brooch, Dad's watch, even our baby books. Patricia had kept them like trophies, reminders of families she'd destroyed. "This is sick," Ryan said, holding Dad's Navy medals. "She sat at our dinner table wearing Mom's jewelry, knowing she was killing her." Detective Gonzalez documented each item, building the case that Patricia hadn't just stolen money, but had taken pleasure in possessing her victims' most precious belongings. The next day brought explosive news. The toxicology report on Mom's preserved blood samples showed massive levels of digoxin, a heart medication she'd never been prescribed. At therapeutic doses, it treats heart conditions. At the levels in Mom's system, it was slowly destroying her organs. She was being systematically poisoned for at least 4 months, the medical examiner explained. The symptoms would have mimicked her cancer progression: fatigue, confusion, nausea. Brilliant in its cruelty. The cancer was killing her, but the digoxin made sure she'd die before she could expose Patricia. I thought of Mom's final months, how she'd deteriorated so rapidly after seeming stable. We'd attributed it to the disease, never suspecting Patricia was accelerating her death with every meal she served, every medication she administered. The investigation revealed Patricia's methods were even more sophisticated than we'd imagined. She had contacts at multiple pharmacies who would fill prescriptions without questions, a network of corrupt medical professionals who would provide whatever drugs she needed, even a mortician who'd been paid to ensure quick cremations without proper toxicology screenings. This wasn't just murder, Agent Torres explained. This was an industry. The architect had built a murder-for-hire network disguised as elder care. As the investigation deepened, more families came forward. The Hendersons from Nevada, whose father had died just 6 months after marrying Patricia. The McBrides from Arizona, who'd always suspected their mother's sudden decline wasn't natural. The Dentons from Oregon, who'd been threatened into silence when they questioned their father's new wife. Each family had a similar story. Patricia had appeared during a vulnerable time, usually through volunteer work or grief support groups. She'd been kind, helpful, indispensable. By the time they realized something was wrong, their loved one was dead, and Patricia had vanished with everything. A week into the investigation, we got word that Dad's exhumation had revealed arsenic in his system. Not enough to kill him outright, his cancer was doing that, but enough to weaken him, make him more susceptible to Patricia's influence. She started poisoning him before they even married, Detective Gonzalez revealed. We found evidence she was volunteering at the cancer center specifically to identify wealthy patients with limited life expectancy. The scope of Patricia's evil was breathtaking. She hadn't just stumbled into crime, she'd made it her life's work. Every kind gesture had been calculated. Every tear at Dad's funeral had been performance. Every moment of playing the grieving widow had been staged for her next victim, Mom. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit was having a field day with the money trail. Patricia's network had laundered money through hundreds of shell companies, fake charities, and offshore accounts. But Mom's documentation had given them the key to unraveling it all. Your mother traced 3 transactions, the financial investigator told me. Just 3, but she chose perfectly. Those 3 transactions connected to everything else. It's like she found the critical threads that held the whole web together. I thought about Mom dying of cancer, being poisoned daily, yet still having the clarity to identify the exact financial breadcrumbs that would expose an entire criminal empire. Her brilliance humbled me. 2 weeks into the investigation, Patricia tried to recant her confession. Her new lawyer, a public defender, since no private attorney would touch her case, claimed she'd been coerced. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. Her storage unit alone contained enough trophies to convict her of multiple murders. Then came the breakthrough that shocked even the hardened investigators. Hidden in a safety deposit box under one of Patricia's aliases was a detailed ledger. Not financial records. Those had all been digital. This was a handwritten account of every murder, every method, every lesson learned. It's a serial killer's diary, Agent Torres said, pale after reading it. She critiqued her own performance, noted what worked and what didn't, even rated victims on how easy they were to manipulate. Mom was in there. Patricia had written, Catherine Sullivan, 710 difficulty, smart, suspicious, but too trusting of family connections. Mistake underestimating her documentation skills. Note for future check for hidden recording devices. Future. She'd been planning to continue killing even as she wrote about my mother's murder. The diary revealed 43 murders over 20 years, far more than even Patricia had confessed to. Some weren't even for money. She'd killed a nurse who'd questioned her methods, a lawyer who'd gotten too curious, even a fellow criminal who'd threatened to expose her. She's not just a black widow, the FBI's behavioral analyst concluded. She's a serial killer who used financial gain as cover for her true motivation, the thrill of destroying families. As word of the diary spread, more agencies got involved. Cold cases were reopened across the country. Families who'd accepted their loved ones' deaths as natural were demanding investigations. One of those families was the Washingtons from Texas. Their matriarch, Ethel Washington, had died 5 years ago, leaving everything to her devoted caregiver, Patricia. But Ethel's grandson, Marcus, now a state prosecutor, had always suspected foul play. Grandma was sharp as a tack at 91, he told me during a video call. Then Patricia showed up, and within a year, Grandma was supposedly suffering from dementia. 6 months later, she was dead. We couldn't prove anything then, but now... Marcus had become a prosecutor specifically because of his grandmother's death, driven by the injustice of it. Now he was part of the team that would ensure Patricia never walked free again. The investigation also revealed how Patricia recruited accomplices. She'd find people desperate for money, often those with sick relatives of their own, and teach them her methods. They'd get a cut of the profits, and she'd get plausible deniability. It was a pyramid scheme of murder, Detective Gonzalez explained. Patricia trained others who trained others. We're looking at potentially hundreds of murders nationwide. But the most chilling discovery came from Patricia's computer. She'd been writing a book, a fictional account of a woman who married elderly men and inherited their fortunes. The manuscript was essentially a how-to guide for elder abuse and murder, dressed up as a thriller novel. She was going to profit from her crimes even after retirement, Agent Torres said disgustedly, teach a whole new generation of killers through fiction. As the investigation continued, I found myself at the center of a storm. Families reached out daily, thanking me for exposing Patricia, sharing their own stories of loss and suspicion. Media requests poured in. Publishers wanted me to write a book. Hollywood producers circled like vultures. But I was focused on one thing: justice for Mom and all of Patricia's victims. The pre-trial hearings were a parade of horror. Witness after witness testified about loved ones who died mysteriously after Patricia or her associates entered their lives. The judge, a stern woman named Irene Hoffman, listened to each story with growing disgust. In 30 years on the bench, she said during one hearing, "I have never encountered evil of this magnitude. The defendant didn't just steal money, she stole final moments between family members. She stole the chance for children to say goodbye to their parents. She stole peace of mind from hundreds of families who will now always wonder if their loved ones' deaths were natural." Patricia sat through it all, no longer the polished suburban widow, but a hollow-eyed prisoner who'd aged 20 years in 2 months. Her network was gone. Her money was seized. Her freedom was forever lost. But most importantly, her victims were finally being heard. "Your Honor," I said when called to give my victim impact statement. My mother knew she was dying. The cancer gave her little time. But Patricia stole even that, poisoning her to ensure she couldn't expose this network of evil. Mom spent her final months not resting, not saying goodbye, but fighting to protect future victims. She succeeded. Every family that gets justice, every elderly person who won't be targeted, every life saved. That's my mother's true legacy. Patricia thought she was stealing our inheritance. Instead, she gave us the opportunity to save hundreds of families. For that, I almost want to thank her. Almost. The courtroom was silent as I returned to my seat. Patricia wouldn't look at me, but I saw her hands shaking. Good. Let her shake. Let her feel a fraction of the fear she'd inflicted on her victims. As the hearing concluded, Detective Gonzalez pulled me aside. "We've located 12 more of Patricia's trainees. Arrests are happening as we speak. Your mother didn't just expose Patricia, she exposed an entire industry of evil, and we're shutting it all down." I thought of Mom fighting through pain and poison to gather evidence to protect strangers she'd never meet. She'd always said that family wasn't just blood. It was anyone you chose to protect. In her final act, she'd chosen to protect hundreds of families from the predator in our midst. The war against Patricia's network wasn't over. Trials would continue for years. More victims would be discovered. More families would get answers. But the tide had turned decisively. The hunters had become the hunted. And it all started with one dying woman's refusal to go quietly into the night. The news cycle had been relentless for weeks, but nothing prepared me for the call that came on a quiet Tuesday morning. It was Agent Torres, and her voice carried an urgency I hadn't heard before. "Lana, we need you at the federal building immediately. Patricia's daughter Lisa is here with information that changes everything." I found Lisa Walton in a secure conference room surrounded by FBI agents and stacks of documents. She looked exhausted but determined, clutching a leather journal I recognized as one of Patricia's. "I've been hiding something," Lisa began without preamble. "When I ran away 15 years ago, I took more than just myself. I took Mother's insurance policy." Insurance policy. Lisa opened the journal, revealing pages of coded entries. "Mother documented everything, but not for the reasons you think. She was building protection against the architect. She knew that one day he might decide she was a liability." Over the next 4 hours, Lisa decoded Patricia's journal for us. What emerged was a complete organizational chart of the murder network, including names we hadn't discovered yet. But the biggest revelation was about the architect himself. "Jonathan Ashford isn't the top," Lisa said. "He's middle management. The real leader is someone called the benefactor. Mother met him only once 25 years ago when she was recruited." She showed us a faded photograph tucked in the journal's back cover. Patricia, young and beautiful, standing next to a distinguished man in his 70s. Behind them, barely visible, was a massive estate. "Blackwood Manor," Agent Torres breathed. "That's Senator Theodore Blackwood's estate." The room went silent. Theodore Blackwood had been one of the most powerful senators in Washington before his death 10 years ago. His son, Thomas Blackwood, was currently a federal judge. His grandson ran one of the largest healthcare companies in the country. "You're saying a U.S. senator ran a murder-for-hire network?" I asked. "Not ran," Lisa corrected. "Created, founded, nurtured. The Blackwoods have been doing this for 3 generations. They identify useful sociopaths like my mother, train them, deploy them, and take the lion's share of the profits." The implications were staggering. We weren't just dealing with criminals. We were dealing with one of America's most powerful families. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Mother recorded her meeting with Theodore Blackwood." She pulled out an old cassette tape. She was paranoid even then, always gathering insurance. The recording was crackly but clear. Theodore Blackwood's cultured voice explained the business model with chilling casualness. "My dear Patricia, what we offer is elegance and simplicity. You identify wealthy, elderly individuals with fractured family relationships. You provide comfort in their final days. And when they pass, naturally, of course, you ensure their gratitude is expressed financially. We take 60%. You keep 40%. Everyone benefits." "What about the families?" Patricia's younger voice asked. "Families who can't be bothered to care for their elderly deserve nothing. We're simply expediting the inevitable transfer of wealth. Consider it evolution in action, the smart and capable surviving while the weak and sentimental lose." The recording revealed the network's full scope. The Blackwoods had judges, police commissioners, medical examiners, and politicians on their payroll. They'd been operating since the 1950s, starting with Theodore's father, who'd begun by marrying and murdering wealthy widows himself, before realizing he could outsource the risk. 3 generations of American aristocracy, Agent Torres said grimly, built on the bodies of murdered elderly people. But Patricia had been smarter than even the Blackwoods realized. She documented every interaction, every payment, every murder. Her journal contained account numbers, contact lists, and even recorded conversations with other network members. Why didn't she use this when she was arrested? I asked Lisa. Because she knew they'd kill her in prison. Her only chance was to make a deal with authorities first, then reveal this. But you moved too fast. Her arrest was too public. The Blackwoods knew she'd been compromised. So why come forward now? Lisa's expression hardened. Because 2 days ago someone tried to kill me. A car accident that wasn't an accident. The Blackwoods are cleaning house, eliminating anyone who could expose them. I figure my only chance is to expose them first. The FBI immediately put Lisa in protective custody and began verifying her information. Within hours, they'd confirmed enough to know we were dealing with something unprecedented in American criminal history. Thomas Blackwood, the federal judge, had personally signed off on dozens of inheritance disputes, always ruling in favor of the network's operatives. His son, Michael, had used his healthcare company to provide the drugs used in murders, hidden among legitimate pharmaceutical shipments. They've murdered thousands, Agent Torres told me privately. Over 70 years, 3 generations nationwide. Your mother didn't just expose Patricia. She exposed American aristocracy's darkest secret. The news broke that evening. Federal judge arrested in elderly murder conspiracy. Blackwood dynasty accused of running death network. American aristocrats allegedly behind thousands of senior deaths. The public reaction was volcanic. Protests erupted outside Blackwood properties. Their company's stock prices crashed. Politicians who'd taken Blackwood donations scrambled to distance themselves. But the Blackwoods weren't going down without a fight. Within hours of the arrests, their army of lawyers was filing motions, challenging evidence claiming entrapment. They had the best legal minds money could buy and connections throughout the justice system. That's when we received unexpected help. Reginald Blackwood Thomas's younger brother came forward. He'd been estranged from the family for 30 years, living quietly in Maine as a small-town doctor. I discovered what they were doing in 1993. He told investigators. I tried to stop them, threatened to go to the police. They destroyed my career, my marriage, everything. But I kept copies of what I found. Reginald's evidence was devastating. Financial records showing payments to Patricia and dozens of others. Correspondence between family members discussing acquisitions, their code word for murders. Even a recording of Theodore Blackwood explaining to his sons how to identify corruptible officials. The key, Theodore's voice instructed, is to find people with secrets, sexual indiscretions, financial troubles, hidden addictions. Once you own their secrets, you own them. The investigation expanded exponentially. The FBI, DEA, IRS, and Justice Departments from 27 states formed a joint task force. What they found was a cancer that had metastasized throughout American institutions. Judges who'd been paid to rule favorably in inheritance disputes, police chiefs who'd squashed investigations, medical examiners who'd falsified causes of death, politicians who'd blocked elder protection legislation. The Blackwoods had corrupted every system meant to protect the vulnerable. It's the largest criminal conspiracy in American history, the Attorney General announced. The victims number in the thousands. The stolen assets exceed $50 billion, and it was all hidden behind a veneer of respectability and public service. Patricia, watching her empire crumble from her cell, finally understood she'd been a pawn in a much larger game. The Blackwoods had used people like her as disposable assets, taking the profits while letting their recruits take the risks. I want to testify, she told prosecutors. Not for a deal. I know I'm dying in prison. But they used me. They used all of us. Let me help burn it all down. Patricia's testimony was devastating. She revealed training camps where the Blackwoods taught murder techniques, secret meetings in Washington where targets were selected based on their net worth and family situations, even a point system that rewarded killers for efficiency and discretion. They called us harvesters, Patricia testified, like we were farming the elderly for profit. They had quotas territories, even performance reviews. It was corporate murder. The trial preparations revealed the full list of victims. My family had been targeted not randomly, but specifically. Dad's construction company had valuable contracts. Mom's catering business had prime real estate holdings. We were selected from a database of potential targets, our family dynamics analyzed for vulnerabilities. Your parents were coded as Category A targets, the prosecutor explained. High net worth, recent marital separation, adult children with independent lives. To the Blackwoods, they were perfect victims. But Mom had disrupted their perfect plan. Her intelligence, paranoia, and sheer determination had unraveled 70 years of careful construction. One dying woman had brought down an empire. As more evidence emerged, the public learned the true scope of the horror. Nursing homes owned by Blackwood shell companies where mortality rates were suspiciously high. Grief counseling centers that were actually recruitment facilities. Even a publishing company that produced books promoting the idea that the elderly were burdens on society. They didn't just kill for money, the lead prosecutor said. They created a culture that devalued elderly lives, making their murders seem almost acceptable. It was psychological warfare on a massive scale. The Blackwood trials became the most watched legal proceedings in history. Every day brought new revelations, new victims, new depths of depravity. Thomas Blackwood, stripped of his judicial robes, sat stone-faced as family after family testified about loved ones lost. Michael Blackwood tried to flee the country but was arrested at a private airfield. His company's board of directors, realizing the scope of their liability, turned over every document they could find. The evidence was overwhelming. But it was a simple photo that broke the case wide open. Found in Theodore Blackwood's estate papers was a group photo from 1955. 20 young people all smiling at what looked like a corporate retreat. The caption read, "First graduating class, Harvest Academy." They'd been training killers for almost 70 years. Public outrage reached a crescendo when investigators revealed that several prominent politicians had graduated from Harvest Academy. These weren't just random criminals. They were people in positions of power who'd been systematically murdering the elderly while crafting legislation. "This is our darkest hour," the president said in a national address. To discover that those entrusted with protecting our most vulnerable citizens were instead preying upon them shakes the foundation of our democracy. But we will have justice, we will have reform, and we will honor the victims by ensuring this never happens again. The trials would continue for years. The financial restitution would take decades to sort out. But the network was destroyed, its leaders imprisoned, its corruption exposed. And at the center of it all was the evidence my mother had gathered while dying of cancer and being slowly poisoned. Her small act of resistance had toppled an empire of evil. Standing in the federal courthouse watching the Blackwoods being led away in chains, I thought about the butterfly effect. Mom had just wanted to protect her children's inheritance. Instead, she'd protected thousands of elderly Americans from a predatory network that had operated with impunity for generations. "Your mother was a hero," Agent Torres said, standing beside me. "I hope you know that." I did know it. But more than that, I knew that Mom would have been satisfied with the outcome. She'd always believed that evil flourished when good people did nothing. In her final months facing her own mortality while being systematically poisoned, she'd chosen to do something. And in doing so, she'd changed everything. 6 months after the Blackwood trials began, I stood in the beach house living room, watching restoration crews carefully repair years of neglect. The old hardwood floors were being refinished, Mom's beloved kitchen was getting new life, and the gardens were slowly returning to their former glory. "The foundation is solid," the contractor assured me. "Your great-grandmother built this place to last forever." It was more than just physical restoration happening. Our entire family was healing, rebuilding bonds that Patricia had tried to destroy. Ryan had taken a leave of absence from his job to help manage the restoration. Emma spent weekends selecting period-appropriate fixtures determined to honor the house's history. The financial restoration was equally complex. The FBI's asset forfeiture team had recovered nearly $30 million from Patricia's hidden accounts. Combined with the Blackwood estate settlements, victims' families were finally receiving restitution. Your mother's estate will receive full restoration plus damages, Morrison explained during one of our meetings. But there's something else. The federal government wants to create the Catherine Sullivan Foundation for Elder Protection. They're seeking your permission to use her name. I signed immediately. Mom would have loved knowing her name would protect future victims. The beach house became command central for the restoration efforts. Families of Patricia's victims often stopped by sharing stories and finding comfort in community. We installed a memory wall in the sunroom filled with photos of those lost to the network's evil. Mrs. Chen from next door appointed herself our unofficial historian. Your mother would want this story told right. She insisted organizing documents and recordings into a comprehensive archive. One afternoon, while sorting through boxes in the attic, Emma made a discovery that brought us all to tears. Hidden inside an old Christmas ornament box was a video cassette labeled, "For My Children, Watch Together." We gathered in the living room, Ryan fumbling with Mom's old VCR player. Her face appeared on screen healthier than in her final months, but already showing signs of strain. "My darlings," she began, "if you're watching this, then Patricia has shown her true colors. I'm recording this in secret because I need you to know the truth, and I need you to know how much I love you." For the next hour, Mom explained everything. How she'd discovered Patricia's past, why she couldn't confront her directly, and the evidence she'd hidden throughout the house. "I know you'll be angry that I didn't tell you," she said, looking directly at the camera. "But Patricia made threats against each of you. She has people who would hurt you if I exposed her while she could still retaliate. So I'm playing a longer game gathering evidence for after I'm gone." She detailed every hiding spot, every document, every recording. But more than that, she shared her love. "Ryan, my responsible firstborn. You'll blame yourself for not seeing through Patricia. Don't. She fooled everyone, and your trusting nature is a strength, not a weakness." Ryan broke down completely, Jennifer holding him as Mom continued. "Emma, my peacemaker, you'll want to forgive Patricia to understand her. That's your beautiful heart speaking. But some evil can't be redeemed, only stopped. And Lana, my fighter, you'll find this evidence because you'll never stop questioning, never stop pushing. You inherited my stubbornness and your father's courage. Use them." Mom looked tired but determined as she concluded. "I don't know how much time I have left. The cancer is real, but Patricia is making it worse. I can feel it, but I need you to know that every moment of being your mother has been a gift. You are my legacy, not money or property. You are what matters. Don't mourn too long. Don't let anger consume you. Take this evidence, get justice, then live beautiful lives. Fill this house with laughter again. Have families, be happy. That's how you honor me." The recording ended with Mom blowing a kiss to the camera. "I love you all more than words can say. Now go show Patricia and anyone else who threatens our family what Sullivans are made of." We sat in silence, tears streaming until Emma finally spoke. She knew everything and still found strength to fight. "And she won," Ryan added. "She beat them all." The video gave us new purpose. We weren't just restoring property. We were fulfilling Mom's final wishes. The house would live again, filled with the laughter she'd wanted. 3 weeks later, we held a rededication ceremony. Hundreds came. Patricia's victims' families, FBI agents who'd worked the case, journalists who'd covered the story, and locals who'd loved Mom. Judge Helen Rothschild, who'd presided over the initial hearings, spoke first. "This house stands as a monument to one woman's courage. Catherine Sullivan faced evil and chose to fight not for herself, but for strangers she'd never meet. That's heroism defined." Agent Torres presented us with a plaque from the FBI in recognition of Catherine Sullivan, whose bravery and determination exposed and destroyed a nationwide criminal enterprise saving countless lives. Marcus Washington, the prosecutor whose grandmother Patricia had killed, announced the creation of Catherine's Law, federal legislation making elder financial abuse a more serious crime with mandatory minimum sentences. Too many predators saw the elderly as easy targets, he said. This law ensures they'll think twice. Catherine Sullivan's legacy will be protected seniors across America. But the most moving moment came from Lisa Walton, Patricia's daughter. Still in protective custody but allowed to attend, she stood before the crowd with visible emotion. "My mother was evil," she said simply. "She destroyed families for sport and profit. I've spent my life ashamed to be her daughter, but Catherine Sullivan showed me that we can choose who we become. She chose to protect others even while dying. I choose to honor her memory by helping other children of criminals find their own path to redemption." Lisa announced she was donating her entire inheritance, money that would have come from Patricia's crimes, to the Catherine Sullivan Foundation. "It's blood money," she said. "Let it finally do some good." As the sun set over the ocean, we opened the house for tours. People walked through rooms where Mom had fought her silent battle, saw the hiding spots where she'd concealed evidence touch the walls that had protected our family for generations. In the pantry now fully restored, we'd installed a small plaque. "In this room, Catherine Sullivan hid the evidence that brought down an empire of evil. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite that fear." The evening ended with a bonfire on the beach, just like the ones from our childhood. Families shared stories, children played in the sand, and laughter filled the air. Exactly what Mom had wanted. "She did it," Emma said, watching her own children build sandcastles where we once had. "She saved the house, exposed the criminals, and brought our family back together." "From beyond the grave," Ryan added with wonder. "She orchestrated all of this while dying." I thought about the butterfly effect again. Mom's wings had created a hurricane that destroyed a criminal empire and protected thousands of future victims. But more personally, she'd ensured her grandchildren would play on this beach, that family gatherings would continue, that love would triumph over evil. As the fire died to embers, I walked to the water's edge. The waves lapped at my feet, eternal and comforting. Somewhere out there, Mom's ashes were part of this ocean, forever connected to the place she'd loved and fought to preserve. "We did it, Mom," I whispered to the waves. "We showed them what Sullivans are made of." The wind picked up, carrying the sound of children's laughter from the beach house. In that moment, I felt her presence, not as a ghost or a spirit, but as the love that bound our family together and the courage that had saved so many others. The restoration was complete. The house stood strong. The family was reunited. Justice had been served. And Catherine Sullivan's legacy would protect the vulnerable for generations to come. Mom had won the ultimate victory. She'd turned Patricia's evil into a force for good that would ripple through time-saving lives and protecting families long after we were all gone. That's what love does. It endures, it protects, it triumphs. And in this house by the sea, it would live forever. 1 year after the trials began, our family gathered for Thanksgiving at the beach house. The dining room table, once the site of Patricia's manipulative performances, now overflowed with genuine warmth and grateful hearts. "Before we eat," Ryan said, standing with his wine glass raised, "I need to say something. I spent months hating myself for bringing Patricia into our lives, for trusting her, for almost losing everything Mom fought to protect." His voice cracked, but he continued, "But I've learned that's exactly what predators like Patricia count on. Our shame, our self-blame. Mom knew I'd feel this way. That's why she said in her video that my trusting nature was a strength. She was right. I won't let Patricia's evil change who I am." Jennifer reached for his hand as he sat down, tears glistening on her cheeks. Their marriage, strained almost to breaking during the chaos, had emerged stronger than ever. Emma stood next. "I've been seeing a therapist," she announced, surprising no one more than herself with the admission. "Learning how to set boundaries, how to recognize manipulation. Patricia knew exactly how to exploit my need for peace, my fear of conflict. But I'm learning that keeping the peace sometimes means standing up to those who would destroy it. David nodded supportively. Their family had weathered the IRS audit, completely manufactured by Patricia's network, and come through clean but shaken. The experience had taught them both about the importance of vigilance. I have something to share too, I said, pulling out a letter. This came from the federal prison yesterday. It's from Patricia. The room tensed, but I continued. I debated whether to even open it, but I'm glad I did. I'm going to read it because I think we all need to hear this. The letter was short, written in Patricia's once elegant handwriting, now shaky with age and confinement. Lana, I am dying. Pancreatic cancer, the doctors say. Ironic, isn't it? I spent years hastening others' deaths from illness, and now I face my own with no one to poison me faster. I won't ask for forgiveness. I know better. But I need you to know something. Your mother was the only person who ever truly saw me. Not the facade, but the monster beneath. And instead of running or cowering, she fought back. I've murdered 43 people. I've destroyed hundreds of families. I felt nothing for any of them. But your mother, she made me feel something I'd never experienced: fear. Fear that someone was smarter than me. Fear that good might actually triumph. She won. Not just legally, but completely. She died knowing she'd beaten me. Do you understand what that means? In 40 years of crime, she was my only defeat. I'm not writing for sympathy or understanding. I'm writing because someone should know that Catherine Sullivan was the most formidable opponent I ever faced. I'm the monster in your family's story, but she was the hero in mine. The only one who could stop me. Tell your siblings their mother was extraordinary. Tell her grandchildren their grandmother saved lives. And know that even a sociopath like me can recognize true courage when faced with it. I'll be dead before Christmas. I'm terrified. I always thought I'd feel nothing at the end, but I'm scared. Your mother faced death with grace while I poisoned her. I face it alone with only my crimes for company. She won in every way that matters. Patricia Morrison Walton. The room sat in stunned silence. Finally, Emma spoke. Even dying, she's trying to manipulate us, making it about Mom's victory to seem like she has respect for her. Maybe, I said, or maybe even monsters recognize when they've met their match. Either way, Mom did win, completely. That afternoon, we held our own ceremony in the garden. Each family member had planted something in honor of those Patricia had stolen from us. Rose bushes for Mom, an apple tree for Dad, flowering shrubs for all the unnamed victims. Marcus Washington arrived with his family carrying a small oak sapling. For my grandmother, he said. She loved oak trees, said they were strong enough to weather any storm. Other families joined throughout the day. The garden became a living memorial, each plant representing a life taken, but not forgotten. By sunset, what had been Patricia's wasteland of neglect had become a thriving testament to resilience. Your mother would love this, Mrs. Chen said, admiring the transformation. Beauty from ashes, life from death, very poetic. That evening, as families mingled on the beach, I noticed Lisa Walton standing apart watching the children play. I joined her, offering a cup of hot cider. Thank you for inviting me, she said quietly. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome. You're a victim too, I replied. Patricia stole your childhood, your sense of safety, your ability to trust. You're as much a part of this healing as anyone. Lisa's work with children of criminals had already helped dozens of young people struggling with the shame of their parents' crimes. She'd turned her pain into purpose, just as Mom had turned her death into justice. I've been thinking, Lisa said, about nature versus nurture. Patricia tried to make me like her, taught me to see people as marks, to value money over humanity. But something in me resisted. Maybe that's what your mother saw, that even in the darkest places, good can survive. As the evening progressed, stories emerged that we'd never heard. A nurse from the hospice center revealed how Mom had secretly recorded Patricia switching medications. A bank teller described Mom's clever system of documenting financial transfers. Even the mailman shared how Mom had given him sealed letters to mail if anything happened to her. She built an army, Ryan marveled. Without any of us knowing, she recruited people to help expose Patricia. That's what I've learned, Agent Torres said, joining our group. Catherine didn't just gather evidence. She inspired others to stand up, to pay attention, to care. The network collapsed, not just because of documents, but because people chose courage over comfort. The next morning, I found myself in Mom's old room, now restored to how she'd kept it. On her dresser sat a photo from last Christmas. All of us together, unaware it would be our last holiday as a complete family, but also unaware of the strength we'd find, the bonds that would deepen through trial. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called. It was Ryan's daughter, Sophie, now 8 years old. "Aunt Lana Daddy says Grandma Catherine was a hero. What does that mean?" I lifted her onto the bed beside me. "It means she was scared, but did the right thing anyway. It means she protected people even when it was dangerous. It means she loved us more than her own safety. Like a superhero. Exactly like a superhero. But instead of super strength or flying, her power was love and courage." Sophie considered this seriously. "I want to be like her." "You already are," I said, hugging her close. "Every time you're kind, every time you stand up for someone being bullied, every time you choose right over easy, you're just like her." As Sophie ran off to play, I realized this was Mom's greatest victory. Not just stopping Patricia, not just exposing the network, but inspiring the next generation to be brave, to be kind, to protect the vulnerable. That afternoon, we received word that Patricia had died in prison. No family claimed her body. No one mourned her passing. She died as she'd lived, alone, surrounded by the consequences of her choices. "I thought I'd feel something," Emma said when we heard. "Relief, maybe, or closure. But I just feel empty." "That's because she was empty," Margaret said wisely. She joined us for the weekend, still sharp and protective as ever. Patricia was a void where a soul should be. You can't mourn what was never there. But we could mourn her victims, honor their memories, and ensure their deaths meant something. The Catherine Sullivan Foundation had already funded elder protection programs in 15 states. Catherine's law had been passed, unanimously creating federal oversight for elder care facilities and mandatory reporting for financial exploitation. "Your mother changed the world," Judge Rothschild told us at a dedication ceremony for the new Elder Justice Center. One woman's courage created a cascade of protection for millions of vulnerable seniors. That's a legacy worth celebrating. As the sun set on that Thanksgiving weekend, our family stood on the beach watching the waves, 3 generations together. Those who remembered Mom, those who'd only heard stories, and those yet to be born who would know her only through the legacy of safety she'd created. "We should do this every year," Emma suggested. "Gather here, remember her, celebrate survival." "And add new plants to the garden," Ryan added, "for every life saved because of what she did." "And tell stories," Sophie piped up, "so we never forget." I thought about Patricia's letter, her admission that Mom was the only person who'd ever beaten her. But that wasn't quite right. Mom hadn't just beaten Patricia. She'd transformed Patricia's evil into a force for good that would protect families for generations. "Mom didn't just win," I said finally. "She turned tragedy into triumph, evil into justice, death into life. She showed us that love is stronger than hate, that courage defeats cruelty, that one person can change everything." The waves continued their eternal dance, carrying our words out to sea, where Mom's ashes rested. Somewhere in that vast ocean, she was part of something larger now. The cycle of tides, the rhythm of nature, the eternal force that brings justice to the world. We walked back to the house, hand in hand, 3 generations linked by blood and bond, by trauma and triumph. Behind us, the footprints in the sand would wash away with the tide, but what Mom had built, the love, the courage, the protection for the innocent, that would last forever. In the end, that's how good defeats evil, not with violence or vengeance, but with truth and love, and the courage to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Mom had known that. She'd lived it. She'd died for it. And in doing so, she'd ensured that Patricia's darkness would become a light to guide others home. The reconciliation was complete, not just for our family, but for all the families Patricia had torn apart. In our healing, they found hope. In our justice, they found peace. In our restoration, they found the promise that evil, no matter how deeply rooted, can be overcome by ordinary people choosing extraordinary courage. That was Catherine Sullivan's gift to the world, and it would keep giving long after we were all just memories on someone else's beach. 2 years had passed since that first terrible phone call from Patricia. The beach house hummed with new life as contractors finished the final touches on the West Wing renovation. What had once been storage space was now the Catherine Sullivan Memorial Library, dedicated to resources on elder protection and family advocacy. The last box of books just arrived. Emma announced directing volunteers from the Elder Justice Center. Mom's complete collection of mystery novels donated back to us by the used bookstore where Patricia had sold them. Each recovered item told a story of our journey from victims to advocates. The library would be open to the public, a resource for families facing elder abuse or financial exploitation. Mom's love of reading would now help others find the information they needed to protect their loved ones. Ryan emerged from the new office space, blueprints in hand. The contractor says we can break ground on the community center addition next month. The foundation has already raised enough for the first phase. The Catherine Sullivan Foundation had grown beyond our wildest dreams. What started as a way to honor Mom had become a nationwide movement. Chapters in 20 states, thousands of volunteers, and a hotline that had already helped prevent hundreds of potential elder abuse cases. Speaking of the foundation, I said, checking my phone, we just got confirmation the Attorney General will speak at the dedication ceremony, and 60 Minutes wants to do a follow-up segment on how the case changed elder protection laws. The media attention had been overwhelming at first, but we'd learned to use it strategically. Every interview, every article, every documentary was another chance to warn families about predators like Patricia and empower them to protect their elderly loved ones. Marcus Washington arrived that afternoon with exciting news. Catherine's law just passed the Senate committee unanimously. It'll be federal law by year's end. The legislation had evolved from simple elder protection to comprehensive reform, mandatory background checks for elder care workers, federal databases tracking financial exploitation, and funding for local elder abuse task forces. It was the most significant elder protection legislation in American history. Your mother would be proud, Marcus said, looking around at the transformed beach house. She'd love that her home is now helping so many people. But it wasn't just legislation and libraries making a difference. Lisa Walton's program for children of criminals had expanded to 6 cities, helping young people break free from their parents' toxic legacies. She'd arrived that morning with 3 program graduates who wanted to share their stories at the dedication. Meeting you all changed my life, Lisa told us over lunch. You showed me that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to do right. These kids need to see that too. One of her students, a young man whose father ran a Medicare fraud scheme, spoke up. My dad always said caring about people was weakness, but seeing how your family turned pain into purpose, that's real strength. That's what I want to be. That evening, Margaret called us all to Mom's old study. I have something to share, she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. While organizing papers for the archive, I found one last gift from your mother. She handed me a sealed envelope marked, "Open only after Patricia is gone and justice is served." Inside was a letter in Mom's handwriting and a small key. My darling children, if you're reading this, then you've done what I knew you would. Stopped Patricia and saved others from her evil. I'm so proud of you. This key opens a safety deposit box at Coastal Credit Union account number below. Inside, you'll find something I've saved for this moment. Not evidence or legal documents, but memories. Photos, videos, letters. All the beautiful moments Patricia tried to steal from us. But more importantly, there's seed money to start something positive from all this pain. Use it to help other families, create programs, fund research, build communities, turn our tragedy into hope for others. Remember, Patricia thought she was destroying our family. Instead, she gave us the opportunity to save hundreds of others. That's the ultimate victory. Transforming evil into good, death into life, despair into hope. Fill the beach house with laughter. Teach the grandchildren to be brave. Help strangers become friends. Live with joy knowing that love conquers all. Forever your loving mother, Catherine. The next day, we visited the credit union together. The safety deposit box contained exactly what Mom promised. Family treasures we thought were lost forever, along with $50,000 in bonds she'd hidden away over the years. She knew, Ryan said, holding a video of his daughter's first birthday that Patricia had claimed was destroyed. She saved what mattered most. But the most precious discovery was a journal Mom had kept for each of us, filled with memories, advice, and love. Mine began, "Lana, my warrior daughter. From the day you were born, I knew you'd fight for what's right. Here's everything I want you to know." We spent hours reading, laughing, crying, and sharing passages. Mom had documented every milestone, every funny moment, every proud achievement. Patricia had tried to erase our history, but Mom had preserved it all. "Listen to this," Emma said, reading from hers. Emma will doubt herself, sometimes wondering if she's too soft for this world. But gentleness isn't weakness. It's strength, choosing kindness. The world needs her compassionate heart. As the dedication ceremony approached, the beach house buzzed with activity. Volunteers prepared exhibits showing the network's structure and collapse. Survivors created a memorial wall with photos of lost loved ones. Local schools brought students to learn about elder protection. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright. Hundreds gathered. FBI agents, prosecutors, legislators, journalists, but mostly families whose lives had been touched by the case. Some had lost loved ones to Patricia or her associates. Others had been saved by the warning signs we'd publicized. Agent Torres, now retired, but still advocating for elder protection, served as master of ceremonies. 3 years ago, Catherine Sullivan began gathering evidence while dying of cancer. She couldn't have imagined the impact of her courage. Today, we celebrate not just justice achieved, but lives saved. The speakers told stories of transformation. A daughter who recognized the warning signs and saved her father from a predatory caregiver. A son who used our resources to report suspicious behavior at his mother's nursing home. Families reunited after exposing financial exploitation. Catherine Sullivan gave us permission to trust our instincts, one woman testified. My mother's new friend seemed too good to be true, too interested in her finances. Because of Catherine's story, I investigated. That woman had 3 previous elderly victims. We stopped her before she became the 4th. When my turn came to speak, I looked out at the crowd and saw Mom's impact multiplied 100-fold. Each person there represented a family, protected a predator, stopped a life saved. My mother faced a choice, I began. She could go quietly avoiding conflict, hoping we'd be okay. Or she could fight knowing it might accelerate her death, but would protect others. She chose to fight. I shared how that choice had rippled outward, exposing not just Patricia, but an entire network creating new laws, funding protection programs, and inspiring ordinary people to extraordinary courage. Patricia thought she was stealing our inheritance, but our real inheritance wasn't money or property. It was Mom's example of choosing love over fear, action over apathy, others over self. That's an inheritance that multiplies when shared. The ceremony concluded with the official opening of the Catherine Sullivan Memorial Library and Resource Center. The ribbon was cut by the oldest survivor in attendance, 93-year-old Martha Phillips, who'd escaped a predatory caregiver thanks to our early warning materials. "Catherine saved my life," Martha said simply. "Now this place will save thousands more." As tours began and families explored the resources, I found myself on the beach with my siblings and their children. Sophie was teaching her younger cousins to build sandcastles just as Mom had taught us. "We did it," Emma said softly. "We actually did it. Turned the worst thing that ever happened to us into something beautiful." "Mom did it," Ryan corrected. "We just finished what she started." "But I thought we'd done more than finish it. We'd multiplied it, expanded it, made it self-sustaining. The foundation would continue long after we were gone. The laws would protect generations. The stories would inspire courage in people we'd never meet. You know what I love most?" I said, watching the children play. "Patricia spent years planning the perfect crime. Mom spent months planning the perfect response. But neither of them could have imagined this. Hundreds of families working together, thousands of lives saved, millions protected by new laws. Evil plans, but good multiplies." That evening, as the beach house settled into peaceful quiet, I walked through rooms that had witnessed so much. The pantry where evidence was hidden, the kitchen where poison was administered, the living room where families were torn apart and rebuilt. Each space had been transformed from a crime scene to a place of hope. Support groups met in the dining room, advocates trained in the study, families found resources in the library. The house that Patricia had tried to steal had become a fortress protecting others from predators like her. Standing on the deck watching stars appear over the ocean, I felt Mom's presence one last time, not as a ghost or a whisper, but as the love that filled this place. The courage that inspired others, the legacy that would outlive us all. "We showed them what Sullivans are made of," I whispered to the wind. And somewhere in the sound of waves and children's distant laughter, I heard her answer, "No, my darling, you showed the world what love can do." The new beginning wasn't just ours. It belonged to every family who'd found hope in Mom's story, every senior who'd been protected by Catherine's law, every child who'd learned that courage means standing up for those who cannot stand alone. Patricia had been right about one thing in her final letter. Mom had won in every way that matters. But even she couldn't have grasped the scale of that victory. It wasn't measured in prosecutions or recovered assets, but in lives saved, families preserved, and hope restored. The war against elder abuse would continue. Other predators would emerge. But now there was an army of informed, empowered families ready to fight back. Mom had lit a torch that would never be extinguished. As I headed inside to join my family, I paused at the door. The brass plaque we'd installed gleamed in the porch light. The Catherine Sullivan house, where love conquered fear and one woman's courage changed everything. It was more than a memorial. It was a promise, a declaration, a battle cry for everyone who'd ever faced a predator and wondered if they could win. They could. Mom had proved it, and now thanks to her, they'd never have to fight alone. The new beginning had begun. 5 years after Patricia's phone call had shattered our world, I stood before Congress testifying about the Enhanced Elder Protection Act, the most comprehensive reform bill in American history. The gallery was packed with families whose lives had been touched by elder abuse. Their presence a powerful reminder of why we fought. When my mother, Catherine Sullivan, began documenting Patricia Morrison's crimes, she had one goal: protect her children's inheritance. She never imagined her actions would expose a nationwide murder network or save thousands of lives. But that's what courage does. It ripples outward, creating waves of change none of us can predict. The committee listened intently as I outlined the bill's provisions: mandatory federal licensing for elder care workers, a national database of financial exploitation cases, funding for elder abuse prosecution units, and whistleblower protections for those reporting suspected abuse. This legislation won't just honor my mother's memory, I concluded. It will ensure that no family endures what ours did. No senior will die wondering if anyone will seek justice. No predator will operate with impunity believing the elderly are easy targets. The bill passed unanimously 2 weeks later. President Martinez signed it into law at a ceremony at the beach house, now designated a National Historic Site for elder justice. Hundreds gathered on the lawn where Mom had once tended her roses, now blooming more beautifully than ever. This house, the president said, stands as proof that one person's courage can change a nation. Catherine Sullivan's legacy lives not in these walls, but in every life saved every family, protected every predator, stopped by the movement she began. Ryan stepped forward to accept the Presidential Citizen's Medal on Mom's behalf. His transformation over these 5 years had been remarkable. From guilt-ridden son to passionate advocate, he'd become the foundation's director, overseeing programs in all 50 states. Mom always said that family wasn't just blood. It was anyone you chose to protect. He said, his voice strong and clear. Today, our family includes millions of seniors and their loved ones. We are all Catherine's children, united in ensuring no one faces elder abuse alone. Emma had found her calling to developing therapeutic programs for families recovering from elder exploitation. Her gentle nature, once seen as weakness by Patricia, had become her greatest strength in helping others heal. Patricia tried to use my need for peace against our family, Emma told the crowd. But I've learned that real peace comes from justice, real harmony from truth. Every family we help find both is a victory Mom would celebrate. The years had brought other changes. Lisa Walton, Patricia's daughter, had become a respected criminologist, her research on predatory behavior helping law enforcement identify potential elder abusers before they struck. She'd legally changed her last name to Sullivan, a gesture that moved us all to tears. I spent my childhood learning how to hurt people, Lisa shared at the ceremony. Catherine Sullivan's family taught me how to help them instead. They gave me the family I never had, the purpose I never knew existed. Marcus Washington, now a federal judge, had become our closest ally in prosecuting elder abuse cases. His grandmother's memory drove him to ensure swift, fair justice for all victims. Before Catherine's case, elder abuse was often ignored, considered a family matter or civil dispute, he explained to the gathering. Now it's recognized as the serious crime it is. That shift has saved countless lives. The Catherine Sullivan Foundation had grown into an international organization. Chapters in 12 countries, partnerships with the United Nations, and programs that had helped over 1 million families recognize and prevent elder abuse. The beach house hosted training sessions, support groups, and an annual conference that drew experts from around the world. But perhaps the most meaningful testament to Mom's legacy stood in the memorial garden. What had started as a few plants honoring Patricia's victims had become a sprawling sanctuary. Thousands of markers, each representing a life lost to elder abuse, surrounded by vibrant flowers planted by surviving family members. Each flower is a promise. I explained to visitors during tours, a promise that their loved one's death wasn't in vain, that their story will protect others, that love ultimately defeats evil. The garden's centerpiece was a statue commissioned by the families Patricia had devastated. It showed an elderly woman's hands holding a young woman's hands, passing something between them. The inscription read, "Courage is the greatest inheritance. Pass it on, Catherine Sullivan." That evening, as dignitaries departed and the house settled into calm, our family gathered in Mom's living room. 3 generations now, Ryan's 3 children, Emma's twins, and my own daughter, Catherine, born 2 years after the trials ended. "Tell us the story again, Aunt Lana," Sophie requested. Now 13, she'd become the family historian, documenting every detail of our journey. So I told them, as I had many times before, about the phone call that started everything, about Mom's hidden evidence and midnight documentation, about Patricia's evil and the network's collapse, about how one dying woman's courage had changed the world. But this time I added something new. Your grandmother's greatest victory wasn't stopping Patricia or exposing the network. It was showing us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose love over fear. Each of you carries that legacy. Every time you stand up to a bully, help someone in need, or speak truth to power, you honor her memory. Little Catherine, 5 years old, with mom's eyes and stubborn chin, piped up. Was Grandma Catherine scared? Terrified, I admitted. But she did it anyway. That's what courage is. Being scared but doing the right thing regardless. Like when I told the teacher that Billy was being mean to the new kid. Exactly like that. As the children ran off to play, we adults sat quietly reflecting on the journey. The beach house, once a crime scene, had become a beacon of hope. The family Patricia tried to destroy had grown stronger and larger. The evil she'd perpetrated had been transformed into a force for good that would outlast us all. Sometimes I wonder what Mom would think of all this, Emma mused. She'd be embarrassed by the attention, Ryan said with a smile, but proud of the results. She'd want us to keep fighting, I added, to never become complacent, never assume the work is done. They were right. Elder abuse hadn't disappeared with Patricia's network. New predators emerged regularly, finding innovative ways to exploit the vulnerable. But now they faced an educated, empowered opposition. Families knew the warning signs. Law enforcement had the tools. Courts had the precedents. Most importantly, the cultural shift Mom had initiated continued growing. The elderly were no longer seen as easy targets, but as valued community members deserving protection and respect. Elder abuse was no longer a hidden shame, but a crime that prompted swift action. As we prepared for bed, I found myself in Mom's study, now my office. Her portrait hung above the desk, painted from her last healthy Christmas photo. She gazed out with that mix of warmth and determination I remembered so well. "We did it, Mom," I whispered. "We showed them what Sullivans are made of." But I knew the work wasn't finished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new predators, new families needing help. The Catherine Sullivan Foundation would be there, trained and ready. The laws bearing her name would protect the vulnerable. The children bearing her legacy would carry on the fight. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Little Catherine peeked around the door, teddy bear in hand. "Mommy, I had a bad dream about bad people hurting grandmas and grandpas." I lifted her into my lap, holding her close. "Want to know a secret? Bad people exist, but good people are stronger, and we have an army of good people protecting grandmas and grandpas now. Because of Grandma Catherine, she settled against me, comforted. "When I grow up, I want to protect people too." "You will, sweetheart, you will." As she drifted off to sleep, I carried her to her room, tucking her into the bed that had once been mine. The same room where I'd hidden from storms, where Mom had read me stories, where Patricia had claimed to find drugs in a desperate attempt to discredit me. Now it sheltered a new generation, one that would grow up knowing their voice mattered, their courage counted, their love could change the world. Standing in the doorway watching my daughter sleep peacefully, I understood the true magnitude of Mom's victory. She hadn't just stopped a criminal network or saved thousands of elderly victims. She'd fundamentally changed how we as a society protect our most vulnerable members. The ripples continued spreading. Medical schools now included elder abuse recognition in their curricula. Law schools taught courses on elder justice. Social workers received specialized training. Banks had protocols for suspicious transactions involving seniors. Every system Patricia had corrupted Mom's courage had helped reform. Every vulnerability Patricia had exploited Catherine's law had helped close. Every family Patricia had destroyed had become part of an army, ensuring it never happened again. But beyond the laws and institutions, Mom had changed hearts. She'd shown that one person's courage could inspire millions, that love was stronger than greed, that truth would ultimately triumph over lies, that even in death, a mother's protection could shield not just her own children, but children everywhere. The house stood quiet now, filled with sleeping family and peaceful dreams. Outside, waves continued their eternal rhythm, the same waves that had carried Mom's ashes to rest. But her spirit lived on in every protected senior, every empowered family, every would-be predator who thought twice knowing Catherine's army stood watch. Patricia had promised to ban us from this house forever. Instead, she'd ensured the Sullivan name would forever be synonymous with protection, justice, and courage. She'd tried to steal our inheritance and instead had given us a purpose that would outlive us all. As I headed to my own bed, I paused at the window overlooking the beach. The moon illuminated the waves, the memorial garden, the community center bearing Mom's name, all testaments to the power of one woman's refusal to be a victim. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered into the night, "for everything." The wind carried my words out to sea, where somewhere in those vast waters she rested eternally. But her legacy lived on in laws and lives in courage and compassion in every family who refused to let predators win. Patricia had been wrong about everything, but most of all about this: you can't ban love. You can't change locks on courage. You can't foreclose on family. And you can never ever underestimate a mother's love. The Catherine Sullivan house stood strong against the ocean breeze, a fortress of hope in a world that still held predators. But now that world also held protectors, inspired by one dying woman's courage to stand up and fight back. The war against elder abuse would continue tomorrow. Tonight we rested in victory, surrounded by love, protected by laws, and inspired by a legacy that would outlive us all. Mom had won in every way that mattered, and her victory would echo through generations, saving lives she'd never meet, protecting families she'd never know, inspiring courage in hearts not yet born. That was Catherine Sullivan's true inheritance, a safer world for all. And it was priceless. Looking back now, I can see how Mom orchestrated everything from her deathbed. Each piece of evidence carefully placed, each ally strategically chosen, each move calculated to ensure that even if Patricia succeeded in killing, her justice would prevail. But I don't think even Mom could have envisioned the full impact of her courage. A nationwide criminal network destroyed, federal laws transformed, thousands of families saved, a movement that spans the globe. All because one dying woman refused to go quietly into the night. So if you're facing your own Patricia, if someone is threatening your family or exploiting your loved ones, remember Catherine Sullivan. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Remember that one person can make a difference. Remember that love is stronger than evil. And remember, these predators count on silence, isolation, and shame. Break the silence. Seek help. Document everything. Trust your instincts. You are not alone. The Catherine Sullivan Foundation stands ready to help, because that's what family does. We protect each other. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Thank you for caring about our story. Thank you for being part of the army that protects our most vulnerable. Together we are all Catherine's children. Together we stand guard. Together we ensure that love triumphs over greed, courage defeats cruelty, and no elder faces abuse alone. That's our promise. That's our purpose. That's the legacy of a woman who loved her children enough to fight evil from her deathbed and win. What will your legacy be? How will you protect those who cannot protect themselves? When will you stand up and say, enough? The choice is yours. But know this, if you choose courage, you'll never stand alone. Catherine's army stands with you. Now and always. If this story moved you, please share it with others who might need to hear it. Like and subscribe to stay connected with more stories of courage, triumphing over evil. Comment below with your own experiences or how Catherine's story inspired you. Together we can ensure that no family faces elder abuse alone. Thank you for being part of this journey, and may you always find the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves.